The Planning Commission meeting for August 24th, 2015 is called to order. Are there any items not on the agenda tonight for public comment? Any public comments for items not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we will move to the first item on our agenda. The first item is PC 15-195, Myers Road Extension Corridor Plan, Planning File L15-04. Do I read
It's
the...
a legislative matter, so you don't read that
Oh,
until we move on to the quasi-judicial hearings. So you can
Sweet.
just start in with Laura.
Okay, so we will start with the
Or
staff
Kelly.
report.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Kidwell. Staff doesn't have a presentation, but the applicant does. We had a work session 2 weeks ago, and the Planning Commission had some comments and questions. I think the applicant has submitted some additional material into the record to address those comments, and they have a revised presentation that they can give. I also have items to add to the record that were submitted last week and today, actually. Carrie, is it appropriate to enter those into the record at this time?
It is.
Okay. The first item is a memorandum from Ronald Saunders. The second one is the minutes from the Caulfield Neighborhood Association meeting. And third, we have a letter from ODOT, and the fourth one is a letter from TriMet. And as these were received very recently, that we haven't had a chance to respond to them in writing yet.
Mr. Chair, can we take a few minutes and just look through this?
Certainly. Kelly, you want to go ahead?
No, no, no,
No? You're not ready?
nope.
Not ready?
He had like 3 maps.
Actually 5.
Okay, 5 maps.
Is your microphone on? I was having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, sorry.
to move forward? Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay. Mike Hickey from David Evans Associates is here to give a presentation. And Mike, you can let me know when you want me to change the slide, I guess.
Thank you. I'm Mike Hickey from David Evans Associates. I'm the project manager on the consultant side for the planning, study, and the development of the concept for Myers Road.
Is your microphone on? Is it red dot?
I don't know.
It's
It's
the red
red.
dot. Yeah,
It's not
that means
flashing.
it's on. Okay.
Okay. I'll try to speak up a little bit. This is pretty close to the same presentation that the PowerPoint presentation that we provided at the workshop 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you want me to go through the whole thing, or do you want to just highlight the new parts?
I would suggest, since we have the public and the audience, that you go through the whole thing, but I would also encourage commissioners to hold questions until the presentation is complete, so that Mike can get through the presentation.
Have you click for me? The overview of the project is we went through an outreach with the public. Our project, we had a project management team that developed the concept that consisted of the city, Clackamas Community College, and the ODOT, the Oregon City High School. That was pretty much the extent of and the planning commission, people from the planning committee and the city, transportation, and
Excuse
public.
me, just a moment. Is somebody monitoring the volume? Because I'm really having a difficult time hearing.
Closer here.
The red dots are already on.
Go ahead.
So we came up with several different alternatives to go from High School Avenue basically to OR 213 intersection. We went through the transportation system plan to develop our alternatives so that we could be consistent with the transportation system planning that had been done to date. We came up with basically 3 different
Arrows.
Okay, go ahead. Go to another slide. This slide shows the project area and some of the alternatives that were considered. Go to the next slide. This slide shows basically the limits of the alternatives that were considered. So the purple line up on top is the northerly most alignment, and the black line on the bottom is the southerly most alignment. So we we have to get from pretty fixed points on either end. So that we looked at, well, what's the most practical, how's the farthest we could go north and the farthest we could go south. Evaluated that area, oh thank you, and kept our alignments inside that area. Okay, see if I can find the right button here to push to go forward. Things we considered during the development of the alignment. On the right you can see the bus facility that's currently pretty far along in design and approval process. So that fixed the east end of our alignment. So we had to match into that. And it shows the parks planned work. We considered zoning. It's in all the area of the project is within an enterprise zone, and the classification is a minor arterial, which fixes our widths and design speeds of the roadway. We chose actually a pretty lower design speed for safety on this project, a 30 mile an hour. Normally be a 35 mile an hour type of design speed. This slide shows some of the coordination we did, as I covered earlier. We also reached out to neighborhood associations, met with all the affected property owners, and consulted with TriMet for any facilities they might want in the area. We developed the design based on pretty detailed traffic analysis of all the surrounding zones under full development in the year 2035, so we'd be sure and have capacity for the future. We took a relatively conservative approach on the traffic volumes so that we were sure we could have a good operating facility for the next 20 years. Considered multimodal use, bicycles, pedestrians, and there's also some paths planned in the area, combination use paths that either bicycles or pedestrians can use. So we took into account the plans for those and tied into where there's some existing facilities on the Clackamas Community College property. We tied into those and extended those throughout our project. This slide gives you kind of overview of the analysis for future functionality. So it considers all the expansion that's planned for the area, kind of a full build out, if you will, of the area. The analysis focused on these 5 intersections shown. So intersection 1 there is the main access to the Clackamas Community College. Our Myers Road project would provide an additional point of access shown there at number 4. People could come in from the south. And intersection number 2, of course, now is currently a 3-way intersection. It would become a 4-way intersection. So we did our analysis and determined that the Myers Road alternative would need to have a dedicated right turn lane for traffic coming from the east, turning right onto OR 213, a through lane so that people could go through on Myers Road, and then a left turn lane for people turning south onto OR 213. That would be a fully signaled intersection, signals on all corners. Intersection number 4 shown up there would be a stop sign on the connection to Clackamas Community College. We determined that the intersection would operate without a signal at that location just fine for the foreseeable future. In fact, at a fairly high level of service. Intersection 5 shown there for the existing Myers Road and High School Avenue intersection. We did our analysis based on the future connection, which is the green line shown there for Loader Road, hooking into Beaver Creek. and again, a full build out, and determined that a four-way stop would be able to provide adequate capacity at that intersection to the year 2035. So no signal at that intersection would be required. And intersection number 3 is one of the busier intersections in the city here with Glen Oak Road and OR 213. The Myers Road connection would provide some level of relief to that existing intersection, which has pretty much been adjusted for signal timing to really provide about the maximum capacity that that intersection can provide without a major road project coming through. So that it's currently operating about as good as it can. So if we were to build Myers Road, we'd get a fairly significant level of improvement. It would still be a very busy intersection, but it would help. I kind of went over the conclusions here from our traffic analysis, and this summarizes them in a table form. One thing I didn't mention is we would be providing an additional northbound through lane at the Myers Road intersection so that it would alleviate some of the morning traffic on OR 213 and provide more capacity at that intersection, which currently gets pretty backed up, so it would help. The configuration we looked at for the alternatives is one eastbound through lane, westbound through lane, and it's a continuous median or center left turn lane, except in the areas where a median planter would be provided. So we looked at maximizing the planting area in the median. At this level of design, we can't actually determine the exact limits of that, but we would be able to provide a median strip where we don't need a turn lane. So once the property develops and there's more that accesses are determined, then we can determine the exact limits of the median. We do have buffered bike lanes on this project proposed. I don't believe the city has built buffered bike lanes yet, but we proposed a 3-foot buffered bike lane, which is basically 2 stripes, one next to the bike lane and one next to the travel lane. When we met last time, we talked about it provides a pretty wide road section, so upon your recommendation, we reduced that from 3 feet to 2 feet, and we widened the sidewalks from 5 feet to 6 feet, and I'll get to a slide here in a minute that shows that. We have parking only on the south side to serve the proposed park that's going in near the east end of the project, and discourage people from parking on the opposite side of the street and creating additional pedestrian crossings. So for safety wise, we determined it would be better just only provide parking on the south side. If a developer wanted to come through and provide some additional parking or some specialized use, and that could be considered later on. We really considered safety is very important, and as I discussed earlier, we lowered the speed limit or the design speed to 30 miles an hour to provide more of a calming effect for traffic, sharper curves, but not so sharp that they become dangerous. And it tends to slow people down. We tried not to provide any like long straight stretches where people would feel more comfortable going faster. So we did, develop our design to try to do traffic calming, keep people driving slower if possible. We did consider roundabouts when we did the analysis and started laying them out, because this route also has to accommodate delivery trucks and commercial traffic. The roundabouts became quite large, and the entire alignment is going, well, most of the alignment is going through private property, so we really wanted to consider the private property owners' needs and try to maintain as much usable, developable private property as possible for our alignment. So we did not use roundabouts. We narrowed it down from the earlier slide showing the entire area to basically 3 different alignments. And the project management team went through and studied each of the alignments. And we ultimately came up with a preferred alignment and then refined that a little bit more. So we've been through a pretty extensive process on developing the alignment. The criteria we use to develop the alignment: safety, usability of the property was really one of our key drivers that ended up controlling where we have the alignment. We really wanted to take as little property as possible and leave large chunks of developable land intact after the road is built. And I think we were pretty successful with that based on our interviews with the property owners and the project management team. Additional screening criteria. And this is our original typical section that we came a couple of weeks ago here to the workshop with. This is what you saw 2 weeks ago, and then based on your comments, we updated to provide more greenery in the median. Also in the water quality swales, there was a desire to have some additional plantings in there. So we've added trees. The exact number of trees and location of the trees would need to be determined based on water quality analysis, and type of trees have yet to be determined. But to show the desire for the additional trees, we added it to the typical section. We do think we'd be able to provide a number of trees in the water quality swales. They wouldn't be a continuous row throughout the length of the project, but at least a significant amount based on the soil types and the grades and what we've seen so far. Also, we reduced the buffered bike lane buffer from 3 feet to 2 feet and widened the sidewalks from 5 feet to 6 feet. There was quite a bit of talk about what types of separation we would have if we could use raised bumps, what's commonly known as turtles or raised pavement markers. those are somewhat frowned upon by many of the in the bicycling community as being a safety hazard. If the bicyclist is swerving to avoid something that might be already in the bike lane, could hit one of those and be deflected. So based on that proposal, we came up with a couple of different ideas. There's a type of pavement marking that has very small, little, about half-inch bumps on it. I'm sure you've all encountered it many times. Driving the state highway uses it a lot. You run over it with the wheels of your car, it makes a kind of a thumping sound, and you can definitely hear it and know that you're on it. There's been some problems with that here in the city. The material is a little bit fragile and has to be very carefully placed. It's not a preferred alternative, so we've provided this drawing here showing what it could look like with just regular paint, which would be pretty much impervious to, being hit by a snow plow or being taken out in some other way. Proven, paint has been done a million miles of it, and it's inexpensive and it lasts. And the bicycle community seems to really support just the painted lines versus any kind of raised markings. So this is at least an example of what it might look like on the south side, with where we have parking, and then we have a bike lane and then a buffer adjacent to the travel lane. We'll go over some slides here that gives a conclusion from our traffic analysis, similar to what I've discussed already. 3-lane section is appropriate for the entire length of the roadway. 4-way stop at Myers. A T intersection that functions quite well with just a stop sign for the intersecting roadway at Myers. 4-lane intersection right at 213 with the additional right turn lane. It's about 200 feet long, and it would provide a good level of service for traffic. Separate lanes for through left and right. Minor improvements on OR 213, Glen Oak and Caulfield. The minor improvements are in the traffic volumes and operating of the roadways, but they'd be acceptable through 2035. This project would move Loader Road. Actually, Loader Road is a little bit of a separate project, but in meetings with Oregon City High School, it was deemed that Loader Road should be connected to High School Avenue. There's an existing roadway there. It would require much less construction than what was originally shown in the transportation system plan, which basically showed it intersecting with Myers Road to the west of High School Avenue. This has been accepted, determined to be acceptable to the high school, and there would be some minor improvements needed to High School Avenue to make it function when it's hooked up, but it has been at least determined that's where it'll go. So it's not part of the Myers Road project as far as like providing an intersection with Loader Road. Includes access to CCC, as we talked about earlier, provides improves intersection at 213, and just about any level of acceptable development would be allowable within the immediate vicinity because there's adequate capacity with the Myers Road improvements. There's a basic outline. To the right side of the screen is the existing, or the bus facility that's being built. And if you look on the left, upper left side of the screen, there's a dotted line there that shows where the combination bike and pedestrian facility would hook into that dashed black line is the existing trail that goes around the community college. So we would be, since we're dissecting it with our Myers Road project, we would rebuild a section of it so that it maintains its functionality. Shows all the different projects that are affected by this roadway. I need to go through those in any detail. So there's currently, the plans are pretty far along to build the bus facility, which would be the first few hundred feet of Myers Road on the east end. And it'll probably be built within the next few years. And then Myers Road's likely to happen within the next 5 to 10 years. We're pursuing grants for the cost, for the money to build it. And that leads us to questions. Are there any questions?
Any questions at this time?
Yeah. Well,
Paul?
I'll start with the last one I had first, and I didn't understand, if you go back to the map that had the little black dotted line that signified the pedestrian pathway, does that mean that the pedestrian pathway is actually going to extend there, or is it actually going to imitate the shape of the roadway?
The black line, of course, is the existing one, and the dotted purple line would come right along the roadway at the same grade behind the swale, and so it would actually replace a section of sidewalk with basically what would normally be a 6-foot walk would be maybe a 12-foot
Right. So the
combination
black line,
path.
the black dotted line is just an existing condition.
Yes.
And it'll go away later.
Right.
Okay. And so, was there any analysis done on the size of the remnant parcels versus the size of the lots that were going to be left over, given the design, FAR, parking lot, landscaping requirements for future buildings in that area?
So yeah, if you follow the alignment to where it intersects with the property lines, you can see that. Well, starting from the left, there's a couple of remnants from the Clackamas Community College that are left there.
Right.
The edge of the roadway actually intersects right on the corner of that property. That was kind of our control for the alignment, so that we weren't taking any more private property than was absolutely necessary.
Do you have the pointer on that gizmo?
Yeah, there's a.
This
No,
just
the other one.
Oh, maybe I do. Is it this red button in the middle? Yeah. So yeah, this property corner right here, we tried to stay as much off of this property as we could, and
I think
still.
that's the one I'm most concerned about.
Okay.
Whether, and being able to develop something that is typical of that zone on that parcel.
Since it's basically bisected.
It's pretty small.
So both of those remnant parcels are consistent with the zoning of the parcels to the south. So they're all that same campus industrial zoning. We have had discussions with the property owners, numerous of the property owners who've asked, well, what become of these remnant parcels, and would the school district, the community college, be agreeable to doing some sort of land swap or possible sale? And what we indicated in our response to them was that is a transaction that the community college and the private property owners would have to go into. And we at this level
Yeah.
would not be facilitating or participating in that discussion.
I mean, I can see why you have the one that's up there closest to 213, because you have to line up with Myers Road and the intersection, and that takes priority, obviously, but it just kills me to see that other one that could end up being kind of hobbled by the size relative to the roadway and the access and all that other kind of stuff. It just seems like that's going to be a real headache for you guys in the future when you try to develop that area. But that's, more rhetorical than anything else, I guess.
Then the other key location is the location of these BPA towers, the large towers there. We have a requirement from
Right.
Bonneville Power to stay 50 feet from those. So we got as close as we could and tried to, again, minimize the impacts to the property here.
Right. Okay, and then I've got one more about the median strip. You had mentioned that the median strip would be kind of a fluid design, and that perhaps the aspect of the median strip that we are envisioning now with the grass and the trees might go away in light of future development in the area. And I would just hate to see, and this is, I guess, more editorial, but I just hate to see the grassy median strip going away and being, another one of our, suicide strips that we usually see in an industrial area where we just have the yellow lines with the cars in the middle.
Well, let's add that as a recommendation.
Yeah. And I think we want to try to. I know we have to have left turn pockets and things like that to access businesses, and we got to be reasonable about that. But I think also we don't want to make it all completely go away.
Yeah, that would be something we would develop, farther along when we get farther into the design. We're pretty much at the 50,000 foot level right now.
Right.
Yeah.
But I want to say it anyway.
But if,
Okay.
but if we add it in now, then we're going to make sure you're going to be
That's
able to do it.
right.
Well, I think we would all agree that we want to maximize the planted portion of the median, but allow for the access that's necessary to develop those properties. Other questions?
Yeah, Mike mentioned, you mentioned that you had 3 suggestions. You said the striping, the half-inch bumps, and what was the third one?
Rumble strip.
It's a product referred to as methyl methacetate, or MMA. You'll see it typically on ODOT projects. What it has is about every 12 inches there is a raised hump inside of the thermoplastic product. You'll feel it as a driver, but as a cyclist, it's not going to be, it's small enough where it won't cause a deflection.
Wasn't that the half-inch bumps he was talking about?
No, he was talking about turtles.
No, that sounds
Turtles.
Yeah.
Turtles wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
So
So we consider methyl methacetate, the striping across the buffer strip, and those were the only 2 alternatives that we had said.
the other one that was mentioned was the raised pavement markers.
Oh, the RPMs.
Yeah.
Have you considered placement of the
Which
bike
we didn't, we talked about them, we discussed them, but we didn't recommend them.
Okay, well, what is it that ODOT does that's it's divoted into the pavement?
Okay, yeah.
What's that?
So that's very similar to the methyl methacrylate that Martin mentioned, but you can come along and grind them in to where the tops of the little half-inch bumps are closer to the actual grade of the roadway. That's usually done in snow. It's actually required in any type of snow zone or anything like that. So it keeps the snow plows from tearing the striping out. It costs a little bit more. It tends to kind of collect a little bit of debris, but it would be definitely something that could be considered. You don't see it a lot in the cities.
It's more rural.
It's just kind of uncommon.
It's essentially the reflector, the reflective pavement marker, is recessed almost into a rumble strip.
Mm-hmm.
Our concerns with those is they tend to accumulate litter, trash, cigarette butts, everything else. They're a problem for the street sweepers. The sweeper can't get down into them. They start to become a little unsightly. We think that the striping across the buffer strip, the MMA, when that gets to a point where we're feeling more comfortable with it, Those will kind of suit the needs of what I think you guys are hoping for. We did have some outreach with some of the local cycling community. So we spoke to Blaine Myers, who's a member or former member of the Transportation Advisory Committee, also owns several bicycle shops. He was not a fan of the rumble strips or turtles. He wanted something more of a smooth profile. He liked what we had proposed as an alternative. Also spoke to Joe Merrick, who's the transportation manager for the county, also an avid cyclist and Oregon City resident, and he was supportive of our alternative as well.
Okay, well, again, I'll ask the question like that I asked last time. So you understand what our concern is, and I would like to see something that is an alternative system that would meet what we have concerns about. I understand Blaine and Joe and so forth, but they're not voting members of the Planning Commission. So if you could keep that in mind, all of us were pretty concerned about it, and I appreciate the fact that your memo responded to us, but it was, I was looking for something more in the reverse. Here's what we might suggest. Here's why we don't like it. You started out immediately saying, we don't like this. So I was trying to make it be more positive. I was looking at more of a positive point.
It's not so much that we don't like it, it's also not something recommended by ODOT.
I understand.
So we're trying to be consistent with the planning standards and engineering standards of the region.
Yeah, but our concern isn't, to be frank, the bicyclists. Our concern is the teenage drivers going too fast and swinging wide on turns.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are going to wipe out a bicyclist, and if a rumble strip or a turtle, keeps them in place. Now, granted, turtle might just make them even more crazy when you hit some of those, but the odds are, I think, significantly higher that a speeding driver is going to hit a bicyclist than a bicyclist is going to avoid debris in the bike lane and swerve into traffic. I mean, the realities of it is, from what I've observed in Portland and everything else, is that's the situation that occurs more often. It's the bicyclist,
Well, I think we've had a similar discussion on the Lynn Avenue extension.
Yeah.
It's not the bicyclists that are getting into the traffic lane that's the issue. It's the drivers that are cutting the corners on those curved corners. And there's a reason why the bicycle line gets worn out. It's not the bicyclists that's wearing those out. And it's amazing how quickly I've seen those things repainted, and in just a matter of months the line's worn out. So that would indicate to me that there's an issue there that has to do with controlling the vehicles. But while we're on this topic, I wanted to weigh in because I had raised a question last time when we had the work session, and I didn't see any response to it, and maybe I wasn't as direct on it as I should have been. I was actually questioning, in light of what Mike was talking about, minimizing the width of the total road cross section, the validity of even having the buffer strip at all. And I guess my challenge there is that if we're looking at cost being a big issue and eating up private property as being another big issue, I don't know how much you've allocated in estimated cost for a per square foot strip of this roadway, but we're talking about right now a combined 2 and 2, so we've got 4 foot times the length of this road. It's probably, I'm guessing, $6 or $8 a square foot of cost for that roadway. And if you multiply that out, I have no idea what the length of the roadway is, but I'm sure it's a gigantic number. So I guess I'm challenging the idea of the buffer strip, and my suggestion was that the alternative would be to put a rumble strip there to discourage the vehicles from crossing into the bicycle lane.
But if you didn't have the buffer strip, where would the rumble strip lie? In the bike lane or in the travel lane?
The line between the bike
That's only
lane.
an 8-inch line.
Yeah, and the rumble strips are
How
4
wide
by
is
4
the
squares.
rumble strip?
They're typically greater than 8 inches. So a rumble strip on the edge of an ODOT highway is feet.
So I guess what I'm promoting
We're
is
talking about different things.
the width of the line would encompass the rumble strip, whatever that line has to be, rather than a 2-foot wide buffer strip. And I'm just looking at it from cost and from land acquisition. Those are two considerations that I haven't been satisfied that they've been really addressed.
Well, and we're also looking at widening the sidewalks because they're narrow sidewalks.
Well, they've done that.
They did that.
They did that.
But I'm just saying.
And I think that's admirable. But I'm just questioning that additional 4-foot width of asphalt.
And you're talking about in the travel lane?
Well,
Or the
just
overall?
from curb to
Oh,
curb.
curb to curb, okay.
Curb to curb.
Okay, I get what you're saying, yeah. Yeah, I appreciated the picture that you guys put in the packet. And I was looking at the car, thinking, I hope that car is merging into the lane of travel because it's straddling the bike, the buffer. And then the other thing I noticed that I would be afraid of if this was me in the picture is that you got people opening their car doors. So, you know, not that they would be opening their car doors consistently if they're parked there in the industrial area, but you just never know when somebody, you know, I've had that close encounter, and believe me, once you've had that happen, you are very wary about that.
Except that argues for the buffer zones. So they have swerve space.
Yeah. So, but you had talked. You and Martin had talked about the bottomless culvert, and we just got this tonight. But I'm looking at Mr. Saunders' Exhibit 4 here, and I think it has some merit. It does a couple of things that we had also talked about, which is making sure that the oak woodland is preserved and that the wetland is not unduly impacted. So I think that's, you know, it's sort of like hybrid number.
So to speak
2.
towards Mr. Saunders' letter, one of the starting tenets from this project was that the start points for the project on the east and west boundary were already set in stone. We utilized the approved land use decision for the school district property as where the Myers Road extension would begin on the eastern perimeter. So
Is there any flexibility
He's
in
got
that
it
road
connected.
alignment?
as far as realigning the school district's road plan,
Right.
Tony, it's in final engineering review, and they have an approved land use decision. There's also the complication of a park property that's also affected by that land use decision.
Right. No,
But
I'm
zero development.
I'm just asking in response to Mr. Saunders' memorandum, is that flexible, or is that firmly established and it's not flexible?
So
Oh, the park part.
utilizing the section of road that had already been preset for the parks and the road parcel, that, to my belief, is pretty much a set decision. We did make some adjustments during the design process based on Mr. Saunders' comments and move the road further south to run along that property line. But then again, the further south that we move that road, that first turn as you're heading westbound on that road becomes sharper and sharper the more that we move that road further south. So it was our belief that we moved that to the maximum extent possible and still tried to leave as many of the parcels, be cognizant of the effect to the private property owners.
But at this time, we've already gone past the point of making adjustments on that roadway adjacent to the
For the school district and the parks property?
Right.
That's my belief.
That's what I just wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Is straight. Doesn't have
Are there any other questions for Mike? Bob?
Had an accidental, it's a good word to use, observation of a high school driver. A lot of it has to do with not road surface, not design, it's attitude. And I think we have to realize that we got the University of NASCAR up there. And you got a lot of kids that are new drivers, and you've got to protect them against themselves, because they are new drivers, they're inexperienced. And when you mix bicycles and automobiles together, that automobile is going to win every time. So in terms of turtles and bumper strips and things like that, anything that you can do to safeguard that bicyclist, because he or she just doesn't have a chance, especially against an inexperienced high school driver may have six months behind the wheel. They're just not up to the challenge. They're I don't care how many rules you put in place, they're still doing this behind the wheel or this. So I understand your expertise in setting forth the boundaries and design of this right of way, but keep in mind that really what you're doing is you're putting together something that's going to be used by inexperienced drivers for the most part. So it just takes one. So whatever you can do to balance that out.
Yeah.
Have you given any analysis in terms of the users of this facility, other than just the general public? Because you've got a university up there, or a college plus a high school.
One of the benefits of this facility, we don't have the full length of the combination bike path, but there is part of it where at least the bicycles can get away from the roadway. It's just a small section.
I noticed you use the word calming effect.
Yeah.
That's to slow down the traffic and keep it under control.
Yeah, that's the idea. Narrower lanes, landscaping, curved roads, that all sort of contributes to not making it look like it's a drag strip, basically. And you can only do so much influence for driver behavior, but...
And just to quickly add, I ride my bike, and I much appreciate a nice, smooth bike lane without any turtles or rumble strips or any other kinds of things that would cause me to lose control of my bike if I were to make a lane change, swerve out of the way of something in the bike lane, which often happens. So I would way rather have nothing and a strip. I'm probably the only one speaking for this position, but I'm going to say it anyway. I really do, and I do side with the folks that do ride their bikes for a smooth, unobstructed bike path.
Likewise, as a bicyclist, if I saw the 6-foot bike lane without a buffer
Yep.
and the sidewalk, I'm going to take the sidewalk.
Right.
And so I'd be chagrined to invest money in this beautiful bike lane that's not going to be used because we're not adequately supporting it with some kind of buffer. And we're then going to be infringing on pedestrians.
So Bob, to answer your question that you had earlier, we did take a close look at what's the target audience. And we all are very cognizant of the project management team. It's going to be a kid who took summer driver's ed, and it's coming into a brand new school year with a freshly minted, still fresh off the laminate machine, driver's license. The entire decision for the buffer strip, which is not an implementation that we've done anywhere else in the city, was based on that target. Everyone else that we've spoken to, the NRC, the Gaffney Lane Neighbors Association, Caulfield Neighborhood Association, we even brought this before, TAC briefly at the beginning. You've been on hiatus, so we haven't gotten to update you guys on it. They've all been very positive comments on terms of the buffer strip. Is it an expense? It is. But it's an expense that we felt was warranted based on the realities of who the target audience is. Mm-hmm. I'm not opposed to the turtles, but I think there are some other viable and reasonable alternatives which will be, in the long run, as good, if not better. The MMA is actually very good at advising the driver when you're coming out of the travel lane. But it doesn't impose the other operational issues associated with the turtles that you have. They're not going to get ripped up every winter season when we've got to come through there with the plows. They're not going to impair the asphalt when they wind up getting popped out for whatever reason. And they cause minimal disruption to the cyclists, because we do have to be cognizant of all of our target audience, not just the motoring public, but also of the cyclists. So I feel, as being part of the project team, that we've been very cognizant of trying to meet all of the needs. And if you'd like to place a condition as to some other alternatives, we'd be open to it. But
I had
again,
one
this
question.
is 50,000 feet right now.
Yeah, I had one question. On the side of the street where we're away from the parking on the side with no parking, was there consideration of actually putting a raised curb between the bike lane and the travel lane?
Yeah, we talked about that, and it was
Extruded curb.
It was a real problem to keep clean because
Clean,
you
yeah.
can't
Street-
get a machine.
street sweeping.
Yeah.
And
I don't think we
those
have a mini
extruded
street
curbs,
sweeper.
it just takes a couple strikes from, because
Yeah.
the thing is, you want something to advise the motorists if they're departing out of the lane. A couple instances of that extruded curb starts to just crumble, fall away. And when a motorist hits that, it's not just a gentle, hey, you're coming out of the travel lane. It's a
Whomp.
pop, you're over that, or pop, you're swerving very drastically in the opposing direction.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do you have any public testimony?
If we're done with questions.
Yep.
If I could, one other comment. You guys had asked for representations for the planting of the trees and the swale. So the new stormwater standards do allow those, and there are some trees that have been defined that will survive in those environments. So I just want to make you aware that we are going to, planting for trees in those bioswales, but they're going to be consistent with the new stormwater standards. There'll be breaks in those bioswales, so where it'll come to grade, and wherever we can get just trees that are approved on our street tree list, we'll try and get those in there. But as far as within the swales, they'll be consistent with the stormwater tech manual.
And that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, we don't expect them to be soldiering along they shouldn't be in a row because
Yeah.
that would look weird
Yeah.
for one thing. And
Why don't
the-
you have a oak every 7 feet? Shame on you.
Yeah.
No, that's
So
not
they're-
at all what we're saying.
No, that's
Yeah,
not what we're saying.
they're dwarfed in size to what we could get into the median, which is kind of represented here. But I just want
I like that big representation, though.
Chair
Okay.
Kidwell,
Go big or go home.
Trees
so.
are pretty large.
Yes, ma'am.
if I may add a couple items, a couple things.
Yes, you may.
I just want to point out, actually, this slide right here, the red writing, if you can't read it, I think it's a really key sentence here.
Yeah,
This
so-
drawing is proposed street section that is subject to change as required or recommended by the city engineer. So it's just intended to demonstrate the total width and the elements of the street design that we want to see, including center turn lane, 2 travel lanes, 2 bike lanes, sidewalks on both sides, and planter strip. And so in the future, this plan does not necessarily set in stone this proposed section drawing. And things can change based on, new technologies, new materials, new ideas, because, we're looking at the timeline for construction, which Mike said is 5 to 10 years out. So elements of this could be, they're still flexible. So I do want to point that out, that this amendment to the transportation system plan is really just the preferred alignment of the Myers Road concept corridor and the proposed and the total right-of-way width. And these TSP amendments, which I'll scroll to here. So really, we've done a whole lot of work to get here, and there are lots of parts to this, but the real amendment to the comp plan and the transportation system plan, I go past them.
It's towards the end.
The other end.
Went all the way. Sorry.
Tony, will this take a form of an ordinance before the city commission?
Yes.
The real amendment to the TSP is this alignment. If I can get to it. So this preferred alignment, and then these changes to the TSP projects, including removal of a few roundabout projects that were in the TSP that are now becoming 4-way stops or 3-way stops. And then the realignment, the refined alignment of Myers Road, and the small change to the Loader Road. And we found the staff report that it's consistent with the goals and objectives in the comp plan. And so after the City Commission adopts this ordinance and this amendment to the TSP, then next steps will be design and engineering, and that would include a final design, final section, the intersection design, the natural resource overlay district review process, culvert and/or bridge design, and then the final landscaping.
Very good. Thank you.
See, we never get to see it again. So
Okay,
that's-
Mike, thank you.
that's why we want to
So
step
at
in.
this time, we'll take public testimony and comments. At this point, I only have one person signed up. If there's anybody else that would like to speak on this matter, if you could go ahead and give Laura your name. Dan Bird is...
Bird.
Dan Berg, Oregon City, Oregon. I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, who owns the property on Highway 213. This piece here. Our concerns are the road alignment is in the one direction leaves our property as an island. As the blue lines here indicate, would get the corner of our property, which would give us access to the road. But the alignment I seen earlier, I believe had another alignment was black and further north, but I think this blue alignment would be okay for us. We're worried about access to the property, and
So just to be clear, you're saying that the alignment that's shown on this slide is acceptable?
yes.
Okay.
We would prefer that where it's touching the other, just the tip of our property line, that it actually should come further down and leave less of an island to the college.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I wasn't sure what we were talking about there.
So instead of having that big island to the right, it comes further down. That's a smaller island. And also make the next little piece of property to the left a smaller island. And our comments were we were just going to we would swap the land that we have to give up the road for the other pieces of property that we could have access to. I wasn't quite prepared to get through this quick here. That's okay. We're worried about the traffic flow for campus industrial. My understanding was that that road is not adequate size for campus industrial zoning, and it appears to me that everything is being designed around the college and the school districts, which are the basic users of that area, which is fine. But we need to do something with our piece of property. We've been trying to sell it for over 20 years and don't have any buyers. The zone needs to be changed, or something needs to be different if you want that piece of property developed. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. So, seeing no other public testimony, we'll close the public testimony portion of the hearing. And I guess at this point, does the commission have discussion on this?
I have one more question for Kelly. So I'm looking at that chart that you only showed the first three of on the slide, but so the stuff in blue is what again? Where it's showing the Myers Road Extension Corridor Plan affects 8 projects identified as shown in the following table. Does the blue highlighting mean anything?
It does not.
Okay, so
It's just alternate.
okay, it's just all. I thought you were saying some of the stuff was going to be removed. So
Well, so
D45 is being removed.
Yes, the roundabout project is being removed, and then
And what about D64?
go back.
No, it's just alternating.
D64, the TSP showed Loader Road going.
Is it in or out?
It's
Well,
in, it's just a
okay.
different location.
Okay.
What she's,
I'm just trying to figure out which ones are
what
going
she's
out and
saying
which ones
is
are going in.
the alignment now connects to High School Avenue instead of going farther to the east.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the presentation, I'm looking at the staff report that has
Oh,
a whole
okay.
list of them here.
Okay.
Would you like me to run through these?
I just thought, well, if they were you were eliminating the blue ones, that just makes it really easy, so.
No, it's just every other.
She just alternated at every other one, okay.
Each of those will be affected in one way or another to some extent.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on page 17 and 18 of the staff report. Okay. Well, I think in terms of discussion, if we can craft a motion and have it brought back to us for final review, we can get in some of the comments that we have concerns about. My particular concerns are about the habitat, and I understand that the report talks about, specifically mentions, if I can find where I highlighted it here. I think it said something to the effect that it should be avoided, or
That
yeah.
Oak Woodland or whatever.
Yeah, both the the recommendation on the Oak Woodland, yeah, I'm getting there. Sorry, I had it open here in a minute, and then I needed to look at that real quick. But I don't think we're, with all due respect to Dan, I don't think we're looking at changing any zoning there. We've had that zone that way for quite a while, and we fully anticipate that it will be maximized to the fullest extent possible. So on page 25 of last week's packet, is recommended that the oak woodland habitat be avoided or impacts minimized to the extent practical. And then it says the same thing about the Douglas fir forest, looking at some of the larger trees. Again, it's recommended that this habitat be avoided or impacts minimized to the extent practicable. And I know that that's so open-ended, but I'd like us to basically put that in our recommendation that having these habitats in these areas are really important. And with the college having a lot of trees and other things, there's corridors that are running through there that are coming across from the other side when they can make it across 213. But we just don't have much oak woodland left, and they're just kind of getting mowed down left and right. And I'd really like to see us let the city commission know that staff's going to do their darndest to try to avoid that. And I really liked Martin's suggestions about using the bottomless culverts. And if we don't have to get into the wetland, let's not do it.
Is there a specific change of language that you'd like to see on that point?
Well, I didn't see anything in the conditions. Well, there weren't really any specific conditions, but I'd like to add as our report to the city commission that we've reviewed this. We've looked at, the bike issues. We're comfortable with either the striping or the MMA as recommended by Martin. They can do that. We'd also like to see the alignment take strong consideration of the adjacent wetland and the oak and fir habitats, and that they be minimized. Their impacts to that, the roadway impacts to that, be minimized. Really try to make sure it doesn't impact them, and that we can enhance them.
Damon, are you writing this down?
Yeah, Damon's writing everything down.
No, because I'm actually not in favor of that, because this is campus industrial.
Okay.
And
I'm just talking about the road.
I understand that. But if we zig and zag the road to avoid the woodlands, and then the property owner decides to cut them all down because he's building an industrial park there, then why did we waste the time and engineering effort?
Well, we're not. I don't think we're wasting the time.
So I agree, we need to minimize the impact, but I don't think, we have a proposed road alignment, and I think really the only issue is stripes or MMA on the buffer, and other than that, I think everything's pretty well been hammered out in months of meetings that, and our concerns were addressed. And You know, I just don't think that it's worth adding when it's already in the staff report that they should be minimized.
Well, that was in the staff report from the consultant. I didn't see it in the, is that in the staff report?
Sorry,
Is there a condition in the staff report that talks about minimizing impacts to the wetland, woodland areas, et cetera, et cetera?
There are no conditions of approval. The proposal did its best to minimize the impacts. And then, of course, when construction permits are needed, then we'll have to go through a natural resource overlay process. And so Chapter 1749 will apply, and that chapter, Commissioner Espy actually asked, are we compliant with Goal 5 for natural resources? And our code and our comprehensive plan are compliant with Goal 5, and so that's Chapter 1749. And so that will be used to review this project, and any mitigation that's required is going to have to be done. And then along with that, the code requires that any stream crossings be by a bridge or a bottomless culvert. And so all those standards will come into play, but we just didn't get into that level of detail.
I wasn't suggesting we add conditions. I was saying this is just our recommendation, saying we've noticed these things. We'd like to see those, concerns be addressed as we work through the process. I'm not suggesting we add conditions.
Okay.
But if they're not enforceable,
It's just letting our comments be known to the city commission that we didn't just not look at this. That's all I'm saying. We've done this before, where we've written up a little recommendation to them and said, we talked about this, this, and this. We hope, you look at it as well. Thank you so much. Because we're never going to see this again.
So are there other comments from the other commissioners? Yes. Bob.
Tony, are you satisfied that the standards for the improvement of the roadways will meet the needs of that industrial park, campus industrial park, for service vehicles and things of that nature?
Mr. Replinger, who is the city's consultant for transportation review, did look at the type of vehicles that would typically be used in a campus industrial zone and found that it was designed appropriately.
I see you've taken out those
Roundabouts?
Roundabouts, and that'll accommodate some of the big, and you never know how many axles those things are going to have for the service vehicles. So
We talked about that a lot, Bob, but you weren't here at the work session when we talked about the truck access and whether there's going to be adequate turning maneuvers and lane for them. So we're pretty much comfortable with that.
okay, good.
yeah, I mean, the road's better than I see on Swan Island, so.
And this goes specifically to Mr. Berg's question. The analysis that we did, John Replinger, our traffic analysis engineer, the target for that was campus industrial. It wasn't for students. It was that campus industrial use and using the maximum utilization of that property, of all the adjacent properties, and it met those needs under the traffic analysis. So it's for whatever they want to do on that property that meets that existing zoning. The road that we're proposing meets all of those needs.
So do we have any other comments, questions?
Just in closing, in support of Denise's comments, I don't like to sit here, and I feel uncomfortable doing it, the review of engineering or oncoming engineering plans. The staff's going to do that for us, but keep in mind, what she's saying and the spirit of what she's saying should be considered throughout the implementation of this whole project. And so how you people do that as professionals is up to you. I don't feel comfortable sitting here requiring that engineering drawings be put before me so I can cross the T's and dot the I's. So I support what Denise is saying in terms of the spirit of what she's saying.
So at the beginning of the presentation, Mike showed you 3 different alignments that were considered at the onset of this. Those were developed after our environmental recognizance, not vice versa. And the alignment that we came with was a very careful balancing act with all of the needs of the project, including public safety and environmental concerns. The alignment that we came up with, while it has environmental impacts, left behind the most viable environmental product at the end of the project. So there's one small wetland that's going to be clipped. The oak habitat, the option was segregate it, okay, go around it, and then what you wind up having is what's referred to as a remnant that basically dies on the vine because it's an isolated patch that's segregated from the rest of the habitat corridor. And then you also have a road that now has much sharper and steeper turns associated with it. Or go through the oak habitat, you increase safety of the road, and we recognize it's an environmental impact, but it's an impact that you recognize on the onset that you don't leave behind as a remnant property or a remnant ecosystem that just withers and dies on its own. So there have been numerous environmental studies. This is the one thing I can talk about here that show you that when you leave those remnant habitats, they tend to not survive. Their survival rates are extremely low. So the alignments that we presented as the preferred took all of those aspects into consideration.
Thank you. Paul, Zach, you have any comments?
Kind of echoing what Damon said, my largest concern is about the buffer for the bike lane and what we can do to increase the perception that it's a 12-foot lane of traffic, not a 20-foot lane of traffic. And so I would support a condition of approval that it'd be up to the engineer to do MMA, do something, but leave it to their discretion to figure something out more than paint.
Paul?
Okay, in 10 years from now, when I drive down this roadway and it's all completed, I want to see, trees that are compatible with the hydrologic regime of the swale, trees that that are outside the swale that are good street trees, a variety of different shrubs that are maintained continually, and the buffer and the bike lane without any obstructions, without any raised obstructions. That's it.
And if he doesn't see that, we're coming after you, Martin.
That's right, with my cane.
Well, I'm in agreement with all of the discussion from the commissioners, and I just add one other thing is if you could arrange to have a police car parked out there every afternoon when school lets out.
I will add you to the list
to
of other
enforce-
individuals who routinely call me for that.
I'm just saying 30 miles per hour sounds great in theory, but if you drive on the other side of Highway 213 on Myers Road,
Let's get some mock-ups.
it's let's just say people drive a lot faster than the speed limit on that side. So I'm trying to think, why would they not do it on this side?
Charles, I think what we should do is we have a little cutout place where you can put your comfortable chair. There'll be a shady tree for you to sit there, and we're going to give you your own personal radar gun.
I like
and
that.
you can be there
I've
and,
always wanted a
and
radar
with your
gun.
cell phone, and you can call this in, because I think that if they see you out there pointing it, they're going to freak out and slow down.
That's great.
And you might be at retirement age, or at least want to slow down a little bit so you could do that.
There we go. So I would entertain a motion. Do we have a motion we can proceed with?
Well, I would move that we recommend approval of the Myers Road the Myers Road Extension Corridor Plan, which is what it says on my thing here, and that if staff would be so kind as to add in some of our comments as a little bit of a preamble about what people said. I'm going along with the bike lane thing, because you guys ride your bike more than I do, but for me personally, more protection is better. And then you could send that out to us by email to take a look at. I'm pretty sure you'll get everything right, so I'm not worried about that. So I would move that.
I'm sorry. I did write down
I figured
the
you
language
did.
that you used earlier. So would her motion have to include?
Why don't you use it just to run it by the group one more time?
Okay, so approve the Myers Road Extension Corridor Plan with the recommendation of either striping or MMA
Yep.
for the buffered bike lane, and strong consideration of wetlands and oak habitats. minimizing the impacts on the wetlands and the oak habitat.
I would be very satisfied with that.
We have a second?
Second.
We'd minimize the maximum.
Call the question?
Yeah, we can go with the end.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Commissioner Henkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Chair Kidwell?
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe?
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff?
I would like to say as a comment after the motion is that if we have another corridor plan that comes before us, hopefully we would get it a little bit earlier in the process and not towards the end. I know we all have the option of attending all these meetings that the city has, but life is short.
So true, so true. All right, we will then move on to the next item on the agenda, which is PC 15-193, Boulder Run Development Application, Zone Change ZC 15-01, Subdivision File TP 15-02, and Natural Resource Overlay District Verification File NR 15-04. And Carrie, do I need to read the
We do,
the
but
script?
let's let everyone who's coming in the room come in so we can do it maybe just once.
So, come one, come all, please enter the room.
I think that would be okay.
Next to this.
Yeah.
So we're going to proceed with the Boulder Run Development Application, and I will be reading the quasi-judicial hearing script and procedures, as this is a quasi-judicial matter.
On the kids.
The public hearing on land use application for this issue tonight, the staff report has been prepared for this application and made available to the public 7 days before the public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to this applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow is set out in state law and Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart on the wall. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony be used or placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both. without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. We will now open the record for the file that I've already noted. And the question I have for the commissioners is, have you had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest or bias, or any other statement to declare regarding this proposed project? And has any commissioner visited the site? If you have visited the site, please identify the circumstances of that visit. Bob? No?
No.
No ex parte contacts, and I visited the site today.
I didn't visit this specific site, but I live in the neighborhood and I am familiar with this area.
Denise?
I have no ex parte contacts, but I wish that I had been able to see the site. I was not able to see it other than from the roadway, which puts me at a little bit of a disadvantage, but I did not want to trespass.
Damon?
Yeah, last Wednesday I went up and looked from Pease and Hampton Windmill, just to kind of look at what sort of buildings there were in the area. So, and that's it, no ex parte contacts.
I have no ex parte contacts. I am familiar in general with the site. I used to live about half a mile away from the site and drove past it on Pease Road, but I have not visited the site specifically for this application. Does anyone in the audience wish to question any of the commissioners on these disclosures? All right, seeing none, we will move forward with the staff report.
Before Ms. Turway starts, maybe we just remind everyone of the time limits that we'll be observing during this quasi-judicial hearing.
Yes, sir. So at this time, I only have one person signed up to speak. If you wish to speak during the public testimony portion of the hearing, please go ahead and turn in a card to Ms. Turway now. Otherwise, we will limit the public testimony to 3 minutes when we get to that point.
Yeah, well, if there's only one person. Let's just play it by ear.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Laura Turway. I'm a planner with the city. So the city received this application for a subdivision zone change, a natural resource overlay district review located off Pease Road at Hampton Drive. This is an aerial photo of the subject site. You can see that on it there is a single family home on one piece at the end of Hampton Drive, and there's also another single family home with some accessory structures adjacent to Pease Road as well. When we took in this application, we did a staff report with findings and a recommendation for you, reviewing the development proposal against the code in our Oregon City Municipal Code. As you can see, there's quite a few code sections, which led to a sort of long report, so thank you for reading that. So I'm going to go through each one of the requests one by one. The first one is a zone change, and that would be why it is before you today. So if it was a normal subdivision and natural resource review, it would stay at staff level because those are pretty clear and objective standards. But because of the zone change, that is why it's before the Planning Commission. Zone change is proposed to be changed from R10 to R8. As you can see on the map, the subject site is identified in red, and there's a lot of this sort of darker orange R8 around it. Across the street, you'll see higher density zoning designations R6 and R3.5. R10 single-family zoning district allows single-family detached homes on a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. The proposed zoning designation R8 also allows single-family detached homes. The minimum lot size is reduced down to 8,000 square feet.
Laura, right now it's all R10?
Yeah, so the proposal is just for this part, and that is all R10 at the moment, yes.
Okay, I just wasn't sure about this long, narrow strip there.
Mm-hmm.
Because depending on which map
It
you look
is,
at,
yeah. I
it's
just
not-
kind of highlighted the property. Our zoning goes to the middle of the
That's fine.
street, so it would include that. So there's quite a few criteria for zone change. The most important criteria refers to our comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan talks about making sure we have sufficient citizen participation. So with that, we have neighborhood meetings and these planning commission hearings, and we did a public notice. We posted notice of the application in the paper as well and posted on our website. The comprehensive plan also talks about numerous places. It talks about efficiency and use of land and public services that serve the proposed uses. And it also asks that we have a variety of zoning designations and densities and housing types. And so staff believes that this proposed zoning designation would lead to greater variety of housing types. As you can see on the chart, R10 takes up about a quarter of the city, and R6 is only at 14%. So we do have a lot of R10 in the city and not that many R8 around. So by allowing the smaller lot sizes, we can get different size homes and housing types, and hopefully with the prices as well. So that is a zone change. The next is a subdivision. The applicant has proposed a 19-lot subdivision. As you can see, there's sort of a gridded network around the proposed development. So the proposal will increase connectivity by connecting a couple of stub streets that exist right now. It'll also extend up Hampton Drive. It will sort of come to a dead end at the moment, but it will increase connectivity throughout the city. Within our subdivision criteria, there's a variety of requirements for street trees and sidewalks and different things like that. The applicant has a proposal with the conditions that will comply with all of our criteria. One thing that you'll notice is they are proposing to retain this existing single-family home on lot 18. All of the other structures on site would be removed. One thing I want to show you with the proposed layout is when someone does a subdivision, they have to do a shadow plat or sort of a future connection for properties that are adjacent that are maybe not developed to show that those properties could develop in a way that is feasible. So you could see if this property to the north ever develops, there is a sort of a general plan for that, although it may not be that plan per se. It would have to go through the review process. Again, the subdivision criteria is pretty mathematical. Minimum lot size, minimum lot depth. There's tree mitigation criteria. In this particular case, we go through and figure out what tree, if there would be trees that were removed or trees that will be retained. In this case, you have both. For the trees that were removed, depending on where they're located, there's a mitigation table on how many trees they have to replace it. There's a condition of approval associated with it, but the applicant would have to replant over 425 replacement trees. Also, we looked at traffic impacts. There was a traffic impact study that was prepared by the applicant. That traffic impact study was reviewed by John Ripplinger of Ripplinger & Associates, who is our city consultant who reviews it. He did concur with everything in the applicant's traffic impact study. The development will add 14 a.m. peak hour trips and 18 p.m. peak hour trips. There was no site distance or intersection spacing. There were no issues that were identified by either traffic engineer. Next thing is the natural resource overlay exemption. In this case, again, the applicant hired a consultant to do a natural resource overlay district study, and then the city also hired a consultant to review their consultant's study. The reports, again, concluded the same thing. There maybe used to be some type of drainage way, again, over across the property. You can see it kind of here in purple. But when the properties to the north of it was developed, it culverted the water that was leading into it, so it's no longer there. So the subdivision around it was approved with a planning file from 1996. So it was a little bit while ago. We had different natural resource overlay district protection standards than we do now. So there maybe used to have been something on site, and both studies concur that there is no wetlands or drainage on site today. With that, we recommend approval with conditions for the 3 files. Are there any questions I can answer for you?
You mentioned that there were 2 studies on the wetlands. I only saw one.
One would have been in with their submittal, and then there's the letter on our part from David Evans and Associates, who was our consultant for the water resource.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider that a study since they said they didn't even go out and look at it. I don't find it very credible. If you don't do site visits, how do you know? So they were only reviewing the information that was submitted to them. They didn't go out and, verify it themselves. So I just found that a little strange.
They did. It was deemed incomplete when it was first submitted, and there were multiple items for its incompleteness. But for the Natural Resource Overlay District specifically, they wanted more pictures and maps of where some of those soil samples were taken and so forth. So they did review it.
Just not physically.
Any other questions for staff?
I have another question. I didn't quite understand the staff report's analysis of the 8 million flag lots that are on this. Is that something that we typically accept with a development?
Within a subdivision, we do allow flag lots if there's sort of no other way. So in this case, we have 2 flag lots. So we have this lot 8 here, and then we also have this, my pointer, lot 4 as well.
Well, what's going on with lot 9?
It has frontage right here. So there is paper frontage, so they're not technically flag lots.
So what's
so
that
9 has frontage there.
What's that little strip supposed to be?
Is
that a driveway?
That's a sewer easement.
It's an easement. Here, I'll go back to the subdivision one.
It's a sanitary and storm drain easement.
So, yeah, it's a utility easement. So the
same thing on lot 6.
The design of the lot is that.
Okay, so where's their access?
So they would take access off Boulder Run Court. So that's where lot 11 also, same sort of thing.
So that you're talking about that T at the end, the top part of the T, which kind of looks like a driveway to me?
That's public right-of-way.
Okay.
Is the purpose of that T for fire department turnaround?
So we do have requirements for frontage, so it meets that as well, but there is a condition of approval regarding fire truck turnarounds on that road segment. That's correct.
I realize that the parcel is constrained, but this is just kind of, it's not as clean as it could be.
But you can see from the layout, I think one of the constraints, if Flora goes back to the larger map, is that because there were no street stubs provided to the property, it's you could have easily back in the 90s, Mayfly Court could have been stubbed to the property line, which would have alleviated the need. On these infill lots, it's difficult when you don't have street connections to connect to.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
As far as its own change is concerned, it only results in a yield of maybe 1 or 2 lots.
Very minor.
Minor.
Yeah, it's the old cumulative effect, though,
Well, I mean, I'm not a big fan of monolithic R8 throughout the community. I don't think that really lends itself to a variety of houses and price points. But in this case, it might be okay to do this, given the fact that there's adequate facilities there. But what I don't like to see is us squeaking it down to R3 and R6 and in the interior, as opposed to away from good roadways and public services.
Right.
So that's where I'm at.
Well, just Denise, as I'm looking at their layout, there's really only two flag lots. There's Lot 4 and Lot 8.
Yeah.
All the rest of them are frontages on public right-of-way.
Yeah, sort of.
Well, 9 and 11 have that little
Yeah.
notch.
That little whatever.
And I guess I'm assuming that that was partially a requirement for fire department turnaround.
So are lots 1 and 2 taking their frontage off of Pease Road, or is there access coming off of whatever that other little rectangle is to the
1 and 2?
It
yeah,
has to be off
to the
Pease.
right of it?
Yeah, that's yeah, coming off.
Is that
Because
is that access
tract-
as well?
The tract A over there is a storm detention
Mhm.
area, so that's not going to give anybody access.
So 1 and 2 will come off Pease.
Off
Because of
Pease.
the designation of Pease, the homes will have to orient towards Pease and have their front yard setbacks on Pease. So in order, no tall fences in front of the house, essentially. And then also, if they have a driveway, because of the designation of Pease, they'll have to combine to a single driveway throat and then sort of branch out to each home.
So you're talking about this thing right here?
Yeah, so on designations of collectors and minor arterials,
Mhm.
you have to orient towards those roads.
Mhm.
And then also, if you have two lots next to each other, you have to combine to have one driveway. So where the planter strip width is, there would only
Mhm.
be one access. And from behind the planter strip, it could sort of spread out if they
Mhm.
need to.
Can we hear from the applicant and then
Okay.
do more
Yes.
questions?
Thank you for clarifying that, Laura.
Okay, let's hear from the applicant.
Good evening. Rick Givens, planning consultant. And with me to my left is Bruce Goldson, the project engineer. First off, let me say that on this application, we have no objections to the conditions of approval as written. I do want to make a few comments based on some of the questions that were asked of staff. I think it's fairly clear this is a very awkwardly served property. It's very slender, skinny on the major piece that is on the west side of the development. It's too narrow to run a road up it, and it's certainly a case where, some street stubs would have been very helpful, and if the street stubs, like for Windmill Drive, had been aligned in a place that served the property better, we wouldn't end up with these flag-shaped parcels. But you have to kind of work with what you got when you develop properties. I would note that the only reason this property is R10 is that it was annexed to the city later on, and it defaults to R10 zoning when it's annexed. Clearly, I think it's fairly obvious that had it been in the city at the time R8 zoning was applied elsewhere, it would have been zoned R8 at that time. This is abutted on virtually every side by R8 zoning. It certainly makes sense to fit in with the neighborhood by establishing R8 zoning in this location as well. Regarding the Natural Resources Overlay District, we retained Martin Schott Associates, who are very well respected and long established wetland biologists that had worked throughout the state, and they did extensive review of this site, and it's very clear that the source of water draining across the property at one time was cut off when the storm sewer for the adjoining property to the east was developed. There's a detention pond on that flag-shaped parcel that is abutting Lot 4 to the east. And the water drains to that detention facility and then comes down the flag access to the tract out to Peace Road. So there's no water that flows across this property from the adjacent areas that at one time may have served to provide some sort of a seasonal drainage way through the property. The plan was reviewed by our wetland biologist, and then their study was reviewed by David Evans Associates, and they concurred with the conclusion of that study. Obviously, I kind of agree with Ms. McGriff that it would have been nice if they had come out and looked at it, but the fact is that 2 biologists looked at it, and I think the circumstances are very clear when you've got water source intercepted and cutting off from the property. There can no longer be wetlands there, and that is the case in this instance. Property is fairly heavily wooded. We presented a preliminary tree removal plan, and we have some disagreements with staff about how some of the trees were counted, but I think that we probably will go back and refine the plan somewhat to get the number of trees that are required for mitigation to be reduced. We anticipate that some of the mitigation trees, because obviously we've only got 19 lots in this project, and planting, up to 20 trees or so per lot would be not practical. We most likely will do some off-site mitigation as is allowed by the code, and providing for mitigation most likely on the other project you'll be hearing tonight, which has very few trees on it. So we will distribute some of the mitigation to that property. Let me see. Boulder Run Court was designed with it's a constrained street section basically due to the limited amount of depth we have in there. And we worked with the staff to come up with a section that has been approved elsewhere in the city, and the T turnaround was reviewed by the fire district and meets their standards for what is required for emergency vehicle turnaround. The area that Ms. McGriff was referring to east of Lot 1 is the storm detention facility for the subject property, and there's some easements that lead to it to get the storm water down from Windmill Drive to...
Could you point to that again?
Yeah. I can figure out how to use this. Let's see. Yeah, how do you get the thing to go, Laura?
The little red one.
Oh, a little red one.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's down.
Cool. So this area right here is the storm detention facility, and this easement here provides for a connection from the Windmill Drive downhill to the detention facility. I think that's the odd strokes. As I said, we've reviewed the staff conditions, recommended conditions, and do not object to those. And if you have some engineering questions, Mr. Goldson would be happy to try to address those things. Otherwise, you have planning questions, fire away.
So does the commission have any questions for the applicant?
Oh, of course.
Damon?
I'm just curious what the rough impact to the plat would be if Boulder Run Court were to arc down and join Windmill Drive. It would basically eliminate Flag Lot 8, but it just, because I'll be up front, I hate flag lots. So anything that could make them disappear or minimizes,
Always problems with them.
it's...
Well, it would impact the neighboring property to the east because it would be a roadway going right adjacent to them. Right now, I believe their house wouldn't meet the side yard setback requirement because it was built as a typical interior lot, so that would be an issue.
You're talking about the lot south of lot 15?
Yes, this lot right here.
Yeah.
So that would be a concern. It also would eliminate even more trees. And I don't know, and
I'm not talking about it coming down beside 15 and 6. I'm talking about it arcing through the property to the back side of 10, 8, and 7 and coming down.
there wouldn't be anything left to develop if we did that. If you're saying that we would come here and arc down this way,
Yeah, some version of that.
there isn't enough depth to put even a 30, whatever that width is, 37 feet or whatever.
34.
34 feet. Even doing that, the total dimension there is, I think, can't read it at this point, it's 150 feet, 160 feet or something like that. If you there wouldn't be enough room for a lot on either side of it if you did that.
Doesn't have to be one on either side. You
Well-
brought it right down the property line, you can have good
Well, either
large
way-
lots going.
If we ran it all the way through and over to here, then we've got the same issue where we've now made these double frontage lots. And, you know, if we run it to the center, there's not enough room for a lot on either side. You wouldn't meet lot depth standards. And if we run it down this side, we've got the side yard issue. So it didn't seem to me that it added that much to, you know, we've got two lots that are flag shaped. My discussion with Pete Walters was that because they have 20 feet of frontage here, they aren't technically not considered flag lots
I
under the
understand
code.
that.
So I don't think we have any code violations here in this configuration. And I don't know what would be gained other than eating up more land in right-of-way and eliminating 2 or 3 lots. And I don't know how we would make it work in a fashion that met code.
And then along those same lines, down on 1, 2, 3, and 4, what would be the difficulty of, I mean, again, we're losing a lot, I understand that difficulty, of moving the storm detention up to lot 4 and expanding 1, 2, 3, and 5's area so that they're R8, not R7-ish.
Lot 4 is not at the low point of the property, for one thing, so that it would be problematic from that standpoint.
What is the low point?
You know, technically, the lowest point's down here.
At the end of lot 2.
Or the detention pond.
Yeah.
No, lot 1.
So that would be a problem. We've also, there is not enough room here for, you know, if so you're saying basically to eliminate another lot.
And expand the size of the other 4.
Well, obviously, a development has to pencil, and in this case, if we remove, you know, a lot here and we eliminate a lot or 2 in here, it no longer begins to pencil when you start talking about that. And I don't think you've got a configuration that works to meet standards. The code allows up to 20% modification in lot size, and we're just conforming to what the code says.
No, I understand that. I know
you don't like it, but that's what it says.
Well,
Humor him and see if it works.
It just, you know, bigger lots sell for more. Granted, they don't necessarily sell for the same as a lot with a house, smaller lot with a house, but I would think that having a pond with, you know, fronting or backing or siding your larger lots would actually be a selling feature. I mean, you know, you turn the storm detention into a feature rather than a bug, you know, like windows.
Well, I think, you know, to answer some of this, we're using some of the existing piping from the existing detention pond in ours and the access road. There's an access road up that flag. And so in effect, we're combining these two facilities into one general area. And we're using the existing 30-inch lines to convey the water across into Pease Road.
Where do you have the 30-inch line? I don't see that.
It comes right up that flag there.
I got a little red dot on where it is here. If you want to, it just kind of comes right out here, and there's a manhole in the street.
Oh, okay.
There's an existing 30-inch line that comes down and into Pease Road, and then goes across down to Pease Road and back into the adjoining property down there.
Okay, answered my questions. Don't like the answers, but the answer.
I understand.
Other questions for the applicant?
So Bruce, what is that detention pond going to look like? Being that it is so narrow.
It's going to be a vegetated pond very similar to the one that's already there. I mean, there's specific criteria about plantings and what it looks like.
I didn't
It's
see
gonna
the
look
one that's
very
already.
similar.
I didn't see the one that's already there because I was only able to view the property from the site.
You had perfect access to that one, Denise. That's
private, that's public property. You could have went out.
I didn't know that, and I did not want to trespass.
Okay, so anyway, it's a standard-looking detention pond. It'll look very similar to the one that's there. It's vegetated. There'll be a landscape plan that goes with it, very similar to the other ones that we've done in recent times in the city.
It's not one of those detention pits then, right?
Well, I don't know what a detention pit is, but
There's the one with the vertical walls and
it does. It will have a wall on one side, which is allowed.
okay.
And the existing one has a wall on two sides.
Right.
And 3-to-1 slopes that come right up to the lot line on the other side. So in some respects, it's very similar to the structure, the facility that's there now.
Okay.
Very similar.
Yeah, that one's, I think I know that one.
So in terms of designing the layout for this, humor me, was there any attempt at all to try to save some of the trees on the property? Because it looks like from the tree mitigation plan, which I appreciate that it's in this because I didn't see one for the other application. It looks like the only trees that are going to be left on this site end up being on lot 18 unless you tell me they're someplace else. Like, they're little teeny tiny X's. So mine was, that's the scale I had.
Okay, that's not real helpful, is it?
No.
No, we have a full-size plan that shows it.
We don't get those.
Okay. As I said, I think in the final analysis, we're going to go through it and see what we can do. But if you look at, there it is on the, we've got a ton of them right here in the street, and there's nothing you can do about that. And a whole bunch right up here too, where the other street comes through.
Okay, well, my question was, in your design, was there any attempt to try to minimize taking all the trees out? That's just the question.
Yes. I don't like having to have my client plant 400 trees.
So are the trees next to lot 7 that are not in the footprint, are those got X's all over them too?
These here?
Yeah.
That's the access drive to lot 8,
Okay.
which is an area that I think we could consider to be in the construction area, but we got to discuss that with Laura.
So the answer is basically no.
The answer is basically as much as we could.
Okay, so where are the ones that are going to be saved?
There's some right here.
Lot 4,
There's some right here.
Where?
between 2 and 3.
Rear yard area right there. Lot 4, we've got some here and here.
There's about 4 of them.
Here and there.
Yeah. Not too many.
Okay, so there's a few.
Rear yard of lot 18, 17.
Yeah, I saw the one. I can
That's
see the ones
some-
on lot 18.
Here. There aren't
Okay.
any there. There's a couple here. There's some right along here. And I think we can probably work at saving a few more, like I think that X there probably doesn't need to go.
And what primarily are they? Like I said, since I could not go onto the property.
Well, they vary. The table's over here that shows, well, I can't read that very well, but they are a range of sizes.
No, not size.
Reed
Oh,
species.
there's
What are they?
quite a few fir, there's some maple, there's some
Okay.
alder.
Yeah, I saw that. It just tells me what size they are, but it didn't list, like you say, fir, maple, da-da-da.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Regarding tree removal, real quick, I do want to give the applicant credit because they could have sort of cut the trees before they turned in the land use application and then not had to do mitigation. So it was
Thank you.
nice to go through the mitigation process.
Well, we know what happened to the last
Yes.
applicant that did that. We weren't very happy about that.
Yes.
But I mean, our code does allow it.
Bob, you had a question?
Yeah, in terms of the efficiency of the use of the land, I'm going to give you about a 10. In terms of the design and location of sites and flag lots, you'll give me about a 3. If I was a fire marshal looking at this thing, I'd scratch my head and say, what's going on here?
The fire marshal did look at it. We routed it to him for comment.
And what was his comment?
No problems.
No problem.
Meets all their standards. You know, I've been doing land layout for almost 40 years, and I've been in front of you guys, and this is not my preferred type
Yeah.
of design either.
Yeah.
But when you're doing an infill piece that the city frankly didn't take care of planning the way they do now, back in the day these other subdivisions were developed, what's a person to do?
Yeah, I understand the limitations of this. Like I say, in terms of the efficiency of the use of the land, I think it's fine. But in terms of design, I see some of your challenges. It doesn't appeal to me, but these flag lots bother me a little bit.
Well, I'd be more than happy if someone could show me an alternative that works, you know, to look at something else. But I don't think there is another layout that really eliminates the flag lots without eliminating the lot. You know?
I understand what you're saying, and I concur with what you're saying. I still don't like it.
Any other questions, Zach, Paul?
Give us 3.5, we can make nice little rectangles in there.
So there's two, sorry, I'm about ready to lose my voice.
I'm sorry,
unfortunately.
Denise.
So there's two existing houses on here plus a shop? One house is going to stay and then the other one is being...
You know, this little house right here is not much more than a cabin, but
Okay.
it goes. This is the house, there's a shop
Shed,
up there, and this is a kind of a carport with a shop behind it. And those go away.
Well, maybe there's some deconstruction material in there that can be salvaged and not go in the landfill.
For sake of discussion, were there any site layouts that were made at R10 or even R6?
We didn't look at R6 because frankly, we've heard you guys' comments over the last few years. It might help us in making a connection. I don't know. I haven't really looked at that. R10, you know, all you do would be to eliminate a lot or two, and it's not going to give us any more flexibility in connecting roads.
I had one question, and this is not specifically on your proposed plan, but on the future street plan for the shadow plat. Just curious, was that based on an R8 size lot configuration?
You have that diagram?
There you go.
I'm trying to remember. You know, like I said, this is not committing anybody to anything, but I
Right.
think
It just, my first glance at it, it kind
I
of...
think I assumed that it would go R8, and that's my recollection.
It seemed a little tight for R8.
No, I think all the lots were pretty close to R8 in this layout.
Okay.
Yeah, they're bigger than...
One in there that's less than R8?
In this area, I can get that information for you, but I don't. Again, this is nothing more than a schematic at this point.
Right. It's more about the streets than...
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
you know,
I
it
was
makes
just
sense. You want to
curious.
connect this across here, and you want to get from here to there.
Right.
Somehow, it could come up straight and then have an elbow in it. There's a lot of different ideas that people might come up with.
Okay, if there are no other questions for the applicant, we'll take public testimony at this time. I only have one person signed up for this application, so if anybody else wishes to speak, please turn in your form at this time. I have Jason Mueller.
Hi, my name is Jason Mueller. I live at 19332 Sunset Springs, which is the property that is adjacent to the property number, excuse me, I have to use my glasses, property 12 and 11. So in that corner there is where my property is, and I want to speak on a couple of different topics. Boulder Run Court seems unnecessary if we were to connect the roads long term, which would be Sunset Springs. Does not seem like it would be a feasible idea in my mind. Second, on property 12 on the west side, those are not small trees. Those are 200-foot tall Douglas firs, that roots are extremely deep and old, and they are no more than 13, 14 feet from the foundation of my home, and I feel that they would be an issue if they were to be removed. Along with, on the north side of properties 12, 13, and 19, that is a complete run of Douglas firs that are 200 years old that are also 200 feet tall. So there is some extremely old growth trees that run along the north side and the west side of plots 12, 13, and 19. Within the narrow, long division, there are also a lot of plants and animals in there that is not just spotty trees, that is heavy, heavy growth. And there is a lot, in my opinion, this is not a fact, but in my opinion, there is a lot of drainage that goes through there. There is not just a little bit of water that runs through that area. There would be some serious restructuring to the riparian area that's right there due to the fact of how much water rolls down that hill. It is a descent that runs down there. So it starts at lot 11 as a high part of the property and rolls downhill. And I live at that property just to the north of it, and there's a lot of water that runs through the soil. I've had to construct a retaining wall to keep my backyard from moving further down the hill, just to give a little context. And the neighbor to the west has a retaining wall to keep the property from moving down the hill. And I'm in process of building a retaining wall to the east because of the yard moving down the hill. As far as those concerns between Boulder Run Court, the trees, and the drainage, I don't have anything else I'd like to present at this time. So.
Thank you very much.
When you say moving, you talk about soil displacement?
Soil displacement, yes. Soil is moving downhill due to the fact of high versus low ground when constructed, and lots of moisture in the soil, lots of moisture moving through there. And I believe there would be a negative impact by removing those old growth trees because I think they take up a lot of the moisture that runs through this property.
Are you building a drainage system around your house?
I have a drainage pipe around my house now, yes.
Okay.
So it's not a big, it's a 4-inch drain pipe, but yes. So
Laura, could you use the pointer thingy and show us where his lot is?
I live right there.
Right there, okay.
So Boulder Run Court here, I don't get the merit to the necessity of having that if there's going to be a connection, which is Sunset Springs, which is in front of my property right here to the north. And then trees are located right here, along here, that are extremely old growth. I mean, they run all the way down. Actually, I didn't include property 15, but they run all the way down to property 15. They're a dividing line between our property at Sunset Springs and this proposed property. The guy that owns this property over here, this entire section right here with the one home on it, has very old growth Douglas firs here and then here. And they run further up. They go all the way up to Central Point. They are a large line of trees that runs all the way north to Central Point. And if we were going to remove those, I think there would be foundation disruption, definitely, because they have roots that I've dug down 4 feet in our backyard just to run a retaining wall that they're further down than that. Absolutely.
You do realize that Boulder Run Court's not proposed to connect anything. It's just to access 10 and 11 and 12.
Exactly. The configuration of the homes is what I disagree with.
Okay.
The configuration of the homes in Boulder Run Court. I believe that if they were to come with, say R10 zoning, they would be able to restructure this within here to be able to accommodate the homes on it with just running a north-south connection and then a Sunset Springs connection.
You realize that the code is pretty thin in terms of tree preservation for development.
I'm just presenting my case.
I totally understand that, and we're in the same boat as you are in our ability or our lack of ability to enforce a policy that we all are really interested in looking at. And I think that there probably does need to be a larger conversation in this city about how they deal with their trees and the development.
Correct. Yeah, I would completely agree to that statement.
because we're stuck up here every single time with a variety of different trees that we would really like to see. And I know that the development community out there is interested in saving as many trees as they can, because I know that that helps with their property and markets their property and aesthetics and all that other kind of stuff. But we don't really get an opportunity to save as many as we want to. Sorry. Go ahead.
Just looking at their tree plan, and it's really tiny in the online documents, but basically the only trees across 12, 13, and 15 that they're looking at removing are where Hampton Drive comes through.
Which would be right here. Is it the north-south?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
they're
right at the top, just there's a little group of trees just right there across the top of the road. And then the ones that basically are adjacent to your property.
These right here?
Oh, yeah. Those are preserving, and then right on 11, they're looking at preserving those, except for that one that's Xed.
Right here, these two?
Yeah, those they're looking at preserving, and the ones beside. So, and those are like 30-inch and 32-inch. I mean, they are
trees.
Big trees. So
These two right here are probably 3 feet in diameter. This one up here is probably 5 feet in diameter.
well, they have it as 32 inches, but
those,
yeah.
Those
it's still-
trees are remaining.
Okay, then I do appreciate that with
Okay,
the
but what's going
development plan.
What's going to prevent a property owner coming in later on and cutting them down?
They're huge.
Well,
I know, but I mean,
that's the
unless
same thing that prevents any property.
well, unless they put a restriction on them in the plat.
There will be, there's a condition of approval for a covenant, and it would preserve the total number of trees. So for every lot, you would take the existing trees plus the number of mitigation for that lot, say it's 5. And a covenant would get recorded saying this lot needs to have 5 trees. If you cut one down, you have to replant, so you have a minimum of 5. So it's not looking at the size that much, it's just saying sort of a one
So
for
they
one
can cut down
now.
200-year-old
But
and put up a 3-foot ornamental Chinese blossom.
maple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But it's something, right?
It's
right
something.
now.
Yeah.
Not enough.
It just concerns me because of the setback, the distance of the tree from the foundation. If they're going to preserve those, and that were to be part of the deal, or at least emphasized, then that would help a lot in that part of it. Still, the Boulder Run issue here with the connection to these properties in the back is a little bit worrying to me because of the Sunset Springs connection just to the north. I mean, I don't see a distance on the map, but that's no more than 80 feet at best.
Well, based on this, it looks like those trees are right on the property line.
They are. They are right on the property line.
So-
The west side of the tree trunk is literally the east side of my property. It was
Well-
just
They were
surveyed.
probably planted as border trees way back when.
So
Right.
the property owner, future property owner is in the audience, and maybe you should talk to him about getting some sort of a restrictive covenant on those trees that apply to those particular lots so that they cannot be cut down.
Okay.
Except in disease or, that sort of stuff. Okay.
Very
but
good.
Yeah, good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your information, especially about the soil issues.
Thank you, guys.
Are there any other members of the audience that wanted to speak on this matter? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the.
They get rebuttal.
No, yeah.
Oh, that's right, we have rebuttal. The applicant gets to give rebuttal.
Okay, Bruce and Rick, let's see how we can fix that.
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
I said, let's see how we can fix that.
I'm not sure what that is, I'm sorry.
The previous testimony.
About maintaining the trees and not
You
having
already
to.
addressed the trees fairly well. We're not proposing to remove the ones that he was most concerned with.
Talking about subsequent to
Putting something in the
Icon
CCRs.
selling those lots off.
Well, first of all, I would note that the cost of removing a big tree from your backyards is not inconsequential. You're looking $5,000-6,000 to have somebody come in and take it out. So it's not something that a property owner is likely to contemplate, absent it being diseased and going to fall on his house.
The other issue, if they are in fact over on 2 properties, you'd have to get some sort of agreement between the adjacent owner to
to remove that tree anyway, because the ownership would be inconclusive of who owns it.
Oh,
How do you put a survey line down the middle of a tree?
Well, it can
can be a problem.
Right,
Put a
you only
tree
have to
down the
monument the corners, you don't have to, and even if the corner fell where a tree was, you'd provide some sort of offset to the corner.
You'd just put a stake in the ground where you could put a stake in the ground and note how far and at what distance it is from the true corner.
Yeah, I mean, it was real common back then to have your corners and then plant a row of trees instead of a fence.
Or they may just have cleared the part that was clearly in their property and left the ones on the border.
So do you gentlemen have any other comments in rebuttal to the public testimony?
About soil movement or any of that, drainage.
The drainage issues, frankly, I think were, ones that we find in Oregon everywhere. You've got some issues of potentially water tables and those kinds of things that are handled through standard engineering practices. I don't think we foresee anything here that is unusual at all in terms of Oregon City and what we've done in other projects.
The other thing is, each one of these lots will have a foundation and rain drain to connect up, so all the impervious water is going to be directed to a storm system automatically. So that's going to be collected in a more formal manner than currently is.
Will be drainage at the end of the new street that will provide for collection of water, and so it's going to help to absorb water from the area surrounding it.
We've been given documentation that the drainage is going to work, correct?
I prepared a fairly exhaustive preliminary storm plan that shows how this is collected and works.
Thank you. So we
Engineering plans will be reviewed by the city engineer for compliance with city code. We'll provide storm detention and all those things that we do these days to handle these kinds of questions. Understandable, there are neighborhood concerns, but there are answers for all of those concerns.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
So at this time, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. Does the commission have any discussion on this proposal?
I didn't hear anything.
Bob?
Well, I think it's an efficient use of property. I think the design is not absolutely perfect, obviously. I don't like the flag lots, but what are you going to do? I think the spirit of the, I get back to that word, we can argue all day about the intent, but I'm going to support this. I don't think that it could be done any better without giving up some efficiency in the use of the property. And I agree with the applicant. A lot of these pieces of property come with history that just really confusing, and so I'm going to support this plan. Zone change.
So, Zan? Zach?
I think R8 fits the neighborhood. I agree with the rest of the commission. I don't like flag lots. I'm not creative enough to come up with a better site design to not include them. But I support this.
I echo those comments too. I'm not crazy about the design. It's an infill piece. I think that I think as a planning commission, it's probably not related to the project per se, but I think there really does need to be a larger conversation about tree preservation and mitigation. I don't know if that's something that we take up with the city council. I don't know if they support it, but I really do think that that's something we should probably think about in our goals, subsequently.
We've been talking about it for 4 years and nothing's changed.
I agree. But I'm going to keep talking about it until it does, hopefully. And and obviously if we don't have, folks that support it, then there's no point. But I don't think there's anything that we can do to impose our wishes about trees on this particular development, because we have, you know, a specific set of guidelines that we need to review this by, and we've done that, and it's consistent with those. So I really don't have a problem with recommending approval either.
Denise?
I'm going to hold my nose on this one. I don't like the flag lots. And I really hope that that you guys can do something to work with the adjacent property owner with regard to the trees and make sure that they don't get removed. I'm glad you are keeping some trees. I wish that I'd had a larger drawing, but you know, when your little HP printer only prints 8.5 by 11, that's all you can do. So that's all I'm really going to say about it.
Amen.
Well, I started the whole I hate flag lots conversation, so I'll just finish with that. First off, I want to say I appreciate looking at the tree plan. There's some really large trees, some 48 inchers and some 30-somethings that you probably could have wiggled and cut down, and you wiggled and avoided them. And so from that aspect, thank you. And I guess, like Denise, I'll hold my nose because you've done everything legally, but I really hate that 20% margin you get on lot sizes. It's just, you can take an 8,000 square foot lot and make it 6,400 and you're still legal, and you did that, and you had to do it to make things work. But I wish I could go back in time and make this a nice square piece of property. So.
And I would really agree with all the comments that have been made by the other commissioners. I think this is, as the applicant has stated, a piece of property that the city allowed to squeeze through, and without really, it would have been nice if there had been a shadow plat for this piece of property when some of the adjacent properties were developed, so somebody would have realized that they were creating some constraints to this property that were very difficult to deal with. And I'm not sure that making this R10 is going to improve that a whole lot. You probably end up losing a couple lots, but you're still going to end up with some very awkward conditions. And the one thing I would say, I agree with Damon. I think you've done a good job of salvaging most of the larger specimen trees. I would encourage you, if you can, when you get into the fine tuning on the tree removal, especially around lot 12 and 15, if any of those existing trees can be salvaged that are have X's through them, I think that would be a real benefit to the neighborhood. To maintain some of those large trees that are outside of the street boundaries. But I would concur with the other commissioners, and I would support this proposal.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Mr. Conkle a very brief question?
Yes.
Is there an option for someone to nominate some of those large trees as heritage trees under our current code?
The consent of the property owner.
Okay. We'll look forward to seeing your application.
So,
Icon Development.
Do we have a motion regarding this proposal?
You too, Rick.
I move to approve. ZC 1501, zone change R10 to R8, TP 1502, 19 lot subdivision, and the NR 1504 natural resource overlay district verification.
Second.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Commissioner Hagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Commissioner Mabey?
This is going to pass anyway, so on principle, no.
Commissioner McGriff?
Reluctantly, aye.
Chair Kidwell?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Ms. Turway, this recommendation of approval with conditions goes to the City Commission on September 16th.
Take a 5-minute break. I'm not ready to call my brains out.
Okay, so we're going to take about a 5-minute recess before we move on to the last item on our agenda. So if everybody can be back at 9:30, we'll start promptly at 9:30. So we're continuing Planning Commission hearing item 3C on the agenda, PC 15-194 Pavilion Park 3 development application, zone change file ZC 15-02 and subdivision file TP 1503. Carrie, do I need to read the script
I
again?
think everyone who's here was here before.
Thank
so I think
you.
you just need to go through the conflict of interest,
Okay.
ex parte contacts, bias,
So,
site visit.
have any of the commissioners, do any of the commissioners have any conflict of interest or bias to proclaim? And has anyone visited the site? And if so, when? Bob?
I have not visited the site. I have no ex parte contact whatsoever.
No conflict of interest, and I visited the site today.
I've not visited the site recently, but I frequent the area because I live pretty close to that area.
You're just kind of all over the place, aren't you?
I walk my dogs. I've got dogs that pull me all over.
I thought you rode a bike.
I do that
With
too
the
sometimes.
dogs.
With the dogs.
The dogs are right.
Sometimes with the dogs. Sometimes with a skateboard.
Denise?
You gotta
I
see.
have visited the site.
Same with me. I visited the site when I looked at the other property.
I have no conflict of interest to report, and I am, as I said before, I used to live about a half a mile or so away from this site, and I'm generally familiar with the area. I have not specifically visited the site for this application. So with that, is there any questions of the commissioners on these declarations? Seeing none, we have a staff report.
Good evening, Laura Turway, planner with the city. The city received this zone change and subdivision application for the property located at 19588 McCord Road. As you can see from the aerial photo, it too is surrounded by city subdivisions on multiple sides. This property includes just one piece. The site is currently constructed with a single-family home and accessory structures. Again, we reviewed the development proposal against our code in the Oregon City Municipal Code. A lot of code sections there. The zone change we'll talk about first. The proposed zone change would go from R10 to R6. R10 is single-family residential zoning designation with 10,000 square foot minimum lot size. R6, single-family detached homes, 6,000 square foot lot size. They're both within the same comprehensive plan designation of low-density residential. The property was annexed into the city last year as a default of the annexation. When you're within the low-density residential comprehensive plan designation, you'll default to the R10 zone. So again, here's some excerpts from the zone change criteria. We're looking at citizen participation, efficient use of land, adequate facilities, and then also that we have a variety of housing types and densities. R6, we have even less in the city than R8 or 10. We're at 14%. We have 25% of our land dedicated to R10 zoning designation. The applicant also proposed a subdivision. The subdivision is for 25 lots. You can see the proposed layout for the subdivision. It includes street trees, sidewalks, planter strips, improvements along all adjacent frontages. I wanted to show this slide to show you more about some of the street connections. So this is an engineering slide, the grading plan, so there's a lot of lines everywhere, but you can see that this street connection would extend down, and this is important because this is where Leland Road makes that curve. Kind of the sharp curve, right? When you're going straight on Leland Road. So the future connection would connect up to that intersection. So it would be more of an intersection. So it would be the reason why I'm talking about this is these layouts right here, lots 16 and 17, are kind of funny, and they look like maybe it would be a potential street connection. The city and the applicant opted not to have a street connection here because of the intersection spacing. So it would be problematic regarding our intersection spacing standards, and then also site distance with the transportation engineers and so forth. So instead of put a street connection in now in the wrong place, we will set up a street connection later for the right place. Tree removal. Less tree removal in this one. So the applicant would have to mitigate with a little over 40 trees. So there's less trees on site. There are trees that are maintained to be retained and stay on site as well. You can see most of the tree removals are dealing with trees that would be in the right-of-way in the future. Excerpt of the subdivision criteria. Again, we're looking at dimensional standards, lot width, depth, minimums, tree mitigation, traffic impacts. The proposed subdivision would have 18 AM peak trips and 24 PM peak trips. The applicant hired a transportation engineer to do a study on the proposed layout and subdivision. The study included things like site distance and access, spacing, driveways, so forth. And then the city hired a transportation consultant, John Ripplinger of Ripplinger and Associates, who is our consultant to review that transportation study. Both of those studies concurred. There were no major issues. There was a condition, and it was part of their proposal as well to come out of that, which was the lot on Leland Road, which is this lot 16. This one's kind of skewed a little bit, must have a way for this person to turn around and come out on Leland Road. Mm-hmm. So that is in the existing proposed conditions of approval. With that, we recommend approval with conditions, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Questions from the commission?
No.
I got one.
Bob?
That last comment you made about lot requirement on 16 to turn around, go out instead of backing out onto the street?
So both of the studies said that it was safe for a car within a driveway to make this turning movement, and so they don't have to back out onto Leland Road, that they can sort of turn around and then head out on Leland Road. So the condition is to have a turnaround on lot 16.
Because of the volume of traffic on Leland Road so we're treating that with a condition, that lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So as long as they don't park their boat there, they'll be able to.
No, they're 36-foot motorhome bigger than our house.
The motorhome, not the boat.
Yeah.
Well, I would concur. I'm familiar with that corner, and people come whizzing around there pretty fast. So I think that's a wise thing to require.
And I guess I would say, based on our comments about the weird roads on the last application, the fact that you're looking ahead on this application is
yes,
very, very nice. Thank you.
That's a good thing. Any other questions for staff?
This isn't really a question, just a comment, but it's a Christmas tree farm, and how are there less trees that need to be mitigated? It's pretty amazing.
Because the Christmas trees are a crop.
They're going to be chopped down anyway.
Yeah, it's a crop.
Make it a big lump of coal.
Okay, so let's hear from the applicant.
For the record, Rick Givens, planning consultant again, and Bruce Goldson, Theta Engineering, project engineer.
Seems like we just saw you.
Yeah, I know. Kind of like last night's pizza dinner. You just keep repeating on you. But I think I should get some attaboys on this one after you raked me over the coals on the last one. So no flag lots. We tied in all these street stubs and align the streets for future connection, makes a logical connection at the current bend in Leland Road. I would assume that would eventually become a stop at that point. This property abuts R3.5 zoning to the northeast and R6 to the northwest. We're proposing that be R6 to continue, because otherwise there would be no way to tie together all of those streets from the R3.5 neighborhood and make lots that conform to R10 zoning. We think it makes logical sense to make this last little corner here all R6, and that would complete that portion of the neighborhood in a logical fashion. The property drains to the southwest corner, and stormwater detention will be provided for by expanding the existing stormwater facility in the Pavilion Park neighborhood to the northwest. Provide both treatment and storage there. Let's see, what else can I tell you about the plant itself? Excuse me. It's pretty straightforward, I think, as far as the layout goes. Our biggest concern, frankly, relates to a couple of conditions regarding extending services. I'm going to talk about that here. Come here. First, I'd like to talk about sanitary sewer. Hold on. That's what we're talking about. Oh, you're right. Thank you. Pavilion 3. That would help. Condition number 21.
What page are you on?
Page 3 of 63. Talks about, Laura, could you change that to the plan that shows the Leland Road connection there?
Actually, I think.
There. Yeah, that's the best one.
That's a good one.
Okay, there is an existing sanitary sewer that stubs right here at the manhole, and it drains back this way, and it serves the development to the north and some other properties to the south. Condition number 21 talks about a requirement to extend sanitary sewer from that manhole down to and across lot 16 at the developer's expense. Our proposal right now for sanitary sewer service to lot 16 is a house service on an easement across lot 17. Now, I think the reason that Public Works recommended that condition was based on what they understood the public facilities plan to be requiring, and frankly, we were confused about that after I looked at the grades. The property slopes downhill towards this direction, so it didn't make sense to me that we were building sewer uphill. So I pulled up the city's sanitary sewer master plan, and I'll pass around.
What figure is that?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's the future improvements plan. I'll have to get you the figure number. I don't have that.
We'll enter this into the record.
I've drawn a circle here around the area that includes the subject property. And what the master plan is showing is sewer being taken from this direction down Kalal Court to provide service there. That would be right here on this diagram. You can see where my red dot is. That's Kalal Court. And it shows the sewer serving from that manhole. But you'll note that there's a break between the manhole and the sewer then that continues on to the south and around on McCord and connects back up. So the plan, public facilities plan, calls for sewer for this area to come around here and connect back into this. And I'll pass out the GIS map from the city's website.
Before you do that, can you run through that again a little slower? Because
Yeah,
we
it'll
were
make more
looking back
sense
and
when
forth
I-
between.
It'll make more sense when you get a look at the topography map.
Well, Public Works isn't here.
So the ground grade at Leland, at the existing manhole is shown on here as being something like, let's see, that's 450, 452, about 453 elevation at this point right here.
And on the map, it shows it at 450.
Okay, give or take. This is, so as we go down in front of the subject property, we're falling downhill about 3 or 4 feet.
And on our map, it's 446.
So
We lose 3 feet, so the sewer would be going counter to the topography, going the opposite direction.
the master plan calls for the sewer to come, for these properties, to come around on Leland. It also goes up Leland this way, but to come around Leland and tie, around Leland to McCord and be tied back in here, which is exactly what we're doing. So we believe that condition number 21 should be eliminated. Now, I know staff is not comfortable with that because they haven't had a chance to run it by Public Works, and there is no one from Public Works here tonight, unfortunately. So what we would recommend is that the condition be modified to allow it to be removed between now and the time the City Commission hears this matter, if in fact staff reviews this matter again and concurs with what we're believing to be the facts. So we think that you can allow some discretion in that since it does in fact go on to City Commission for further review.
Can you go back to your fancy colored map?
Mine is the city's.
Yeah, but you handed it out. So
Yeah,
you-
okay.
It's yours.
Where is Leland and McCord on this?
Yeah, I wish they'd put some names on there, but
Well,
okay,
they have
so
Ps, but
this is Leland, right? Actually, right along here, that's Leland Road, and then it makes the bend and goes around that way. This is McCord here, and they're showing going
Okay,
across
so
our
where-
property.
So where you circled in black?
That's kind of the vicinity.
Okay.
So what we're saying is there's a gap right in here. It doesn't call for the sewer to be extended down Leland. In fact, it shows the sewer starting and going on around the curve in line with the contours. So we're not trying to make anything up. We're not trying to make you guys engineers, but we would like some flexibility in that condition to where it can go away if, in fact, what we believe to be the case is the case.
So you're suggesting that condition 21 be amended to allow flexibility by city engineering to work with you on an alternative solution to that.
Correct.
Okay.
There's also, in conditions 10 and 11, in the same general area, at present time, there's an 8-inch Clackamas River Water District line that provides service to some of these homes. City water stops again right at the end of this subdivision. We can either take temporary access to Clackamas River water to be replaced in the future, pay a fee in lieu of construction of our frontage, or we could provide access this way, again, with a house service that would provide city water from that direction. We don't need this in order to provide water for lot 16. And yet condition 10 is suggesting that we be required to extend all the way across here and across our property, a distance of about 225 feet for service to one lot. We don't think that there's a reasonable nexus between what's being asked for in terms of one lot and the cost of the improvements. Not only are we being asked to make this connection, we're also being asked to provide house service lines to these adjoining properties on both sides, and construct water meter vaults for them to the edge of the right-of-way, which is clearly not a benefit to our project. It's an out-and-out taking for adjoining property owners with no suggestion that we be compensated now or in the future. And we don't think that's correct. So we're asking that that condition be stricken, that we be allowed to provide frontage improvements in the form of a fee in lieu of making those improvements now, and that we be allowed to either connect to Clackamas River water temporarily or through lot 17 on an easement to provide a city water connection.
So that's conditions 10 and 11.
11. Now, we have the same issue on lot 9 as far as being requested to provide services to other property owners at our expense, which we don't believe that's consistent with, what it seems to us to be an out-and-out taking for benefit of others with no provision for recompensation. And so we ask that be.
Can you guys do a zone of benefit for that?
So that would certainly be a fallback position. If we don't limit it entirely, that we'd be allowed to get some sort of connection fee when they do connect to cover the cost, because I can understand wanting to get the improvement across there when you're tearing up the road rather than doing it again later, but the cost of that house service lateral should be the cost of the property owner.
Repeat all that about lot 9 again. I'm not following you.
Lot 9.
Yeah, you said lot 9, and it's like, well, that's inside your pavilion development, so who's taking...
If I said lot, I probably meant to say lot line. I don't know what I was saying.
Well, you did say lot 9, but I was, lot 9's way over there, but.
Yeah, I heard you say lot 9, but you were pointing at
somewhere
lot
else.
1 and 2, and I think you were...
Okay, so 1 and 2 is what you were
If I said lot 9, that's because I'm brain dead. But anyway,
no, I think you were thinking of condition number 9.
That's what I meant to say. Yes, thank you. That makes some sense.
Okay, because I was
Condition number
like,
9.
so, gee, lot 9.
No, but
is
I can
taking
understand
from-
why.
Yeah,
we're understanding.
so condition number 9 affects lots 1 and 2.
Yeah, basically it affects construction of this line all the way across our frontage and providing for house services to adjoining property owners that are served by Clackamas River water at our expense, and we object to that. We think that we should at least be allowed to collect something when they make the connection.
Why don't we just call John right now?
So, other than that, we like the conditions of approval.
Okay, so you're concerned with conditions 9, 10, and 11,
And 21.
21.
Yes.
9 times. So were you looking for the same kind of flexibility to work with engineering staff as you were
Yes.
looking for?
I think if we can have a meeting between now and city commission hearing and come up with some.
I don't think it's our purview to hammer all this out now about, how
Understand
that
that.
should all be
Right.
solved.
But
right?
we can allow for, in our
Yeah.
recommendations, that the city staff can resolve that
Right.
with the assistance of the city engineer.
Yeah.
If we don't do that and we allow these conditions to remain as stated, then we haven't achieved anything other than
Right. So
some inequality.
we can allow for the flexibility that the
Right.
staff can adjust these.
Gentlemen, I know are we done with them? I'll wait to make my comment when we have discussion, so.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to clarify on 9,
Condition
which is
9, not lot
which is
9.
1 and 2. What other properties would you have to provide connections to?
I believe that we'd be talking about any homes that are on the west side.
Okay. Because the ones that are kind of north on this picture are, again, your properties. And they're already connected to water lines, so I couldn't quite see what.
Yeah.
But
But I think
okay,
it
you're
would
talking
only
about the other
affect
side
properties on the other
Woodward.
side of the street, yes.
The other
Okay.
side of the street.
Got it, okay.
I think
Okay.
there's two properties over on that
Yeah,
side.
there's like 2 or 3, it looks like, but yeah, okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So
You had
at,
any other questions?
I don't believe so.
Nope.
Not at this time. So at this time.
Oh, I did
we'll-
have one more comment, excuse me.
Okay.
Regarding Commissioner Henkin's question about the Christmas trees. Just wanted to point out that they aren't 6 inches in diameter breast height. They're just not that big. Okay, thanks.
At this time, we'll take the public testimony, and I have 2 people signed for public testimony. The first is David Douglas.
Any relation? Good.
Hi, my name is David Douglas. I live at 19588 South McCord Road. This is my property. I'd just like to have you consider it for approval because I feel it was great to work with ICON and see the nice properties, what they did next door. And they're very nice strolling neighborhoods there. Even this smaller density, and met a lot of nice people right in there also. And I think that their layout is far superior to the 3 other people I talked to about this property. And I would be proud to have this there. I was born on this property and I've pretty much always been there. So other than going to college, and it's getting hard to take care of it all, as you can see. Sorry for how it looks sometimes, but I think that they could make it look really nice.
Very good.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Is the house going?
Yeah, the house is down.
Is it being deconstructed?
The next person we have to signed up to speak is Amanda Kreitzberg.
Amanda Kreitzberg. I'm from Oregon City. I actually border the property. The lots 1 and 4 were the house right next to it. I just had a question of what the plan is for Anita Place, because right now we're dead end. We bought it knowing that it's going to continue forth, but it looks like you plan on having Anita Place go into McCord. And I'm wondering if that's going to route a lot of traffic through us. I know we curve around over to Redaway Avenue, but I don't want to become a real busy, big pass-through street. There's a lot of kids on the street. There's a lot of community. We're talking about having like community barbecues, that kind of stuff, and having a lot of cars just going through there would kind of make it less safe to say, hey, get on your bike, go down to Oliver's house, that kind of. So I just wonder what the plan is for, are they going to encourage cars to continue from Leland around to McCord and make the corner, or are, with the new intersection, eventually when they develop the rest of that land, is it going to be encouraged that cars go through Anita Place to get to Peace? That's just what I want to know, is a future plan for that, how to direct traffic around.
So, Laura?
Looking at you.
The McCord and Leland are collectors, right?
Yep.
McCord is a collector, Leland is a minor arterial.
Right, okay.
Mhm.
So, based on that, the city or the neighborhood streets of like Anita and Pelican Lake and all those, there's no intention to divert traffic in there in any way because you want them to be out on McCord and Leland.
No signage or any design that's any different.
And I think it lends itself naturally to traffic flow in that area, McCord and Leland.
And if you're on Redaway, you'd want to leave
Right through
on
there.
South End or Central Point. You wouldn't want to
Yeah,
drop down to
I think
McCord.
it's
So
pretty hard. There's sometimes there's areas in certain neighborhoods where they become cut throughs, and this doesn't look like that would happen here.
I'm hoping with a big curve and everything like that, that it
Yeah.
won't
Right.
really
Usually
become a
roads-
cut through, and then Redaway already kind of goes across
People have a
with its
tendency
bike
not to
lane
do
and
that
everything.
with
I'm
curvy
hoping
roads.
not. I just want to make sure that you guys are at least aware that
Yeah.
we are becoming a
I mean,
community.
we don't have any
and we're,
control over where the traffic will go.
Yeah, no, I understand, but you can
Yeah.
encourage it, like you were at the first meeting of,
Right.
trying to get people to slow down, that kind of stuff. I just
Right.
want to make sure that you guys are at
yeah,
least
no, Redaway would be
thinking about that.
the bicycle path, and
Okay.
Leland and McCord would be the car path.
Okay.
That's our intent anyway when we did the transportation plan.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on this matter? And does the applicant?
Excuse me, Chair Kidwell?
Yes.
I would like to follow up on the couple of conditions that the applicants raised. They've requested some discretion, revising the conditions to allow some discretion to allow the city commission to make a decision on the water and the sewer service. I have some concerns about that because the city commission's review is on the record, and the applicants made some constitutional challenges to the extent the city can require, particularly the water extension. And I'm not comfortable, without Public Works here in the first place, moving forward with a condition when we're not going to be able to put in evidence before the city commission.
Can we consider findings at a subsequent hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
But what I would propose with regard to these two conditions before you decide to close the record, and then I have to tell you this and ask you to potentially reopen it, is the idea of continuing this hearing tonight, allowing Public Works to weigh in on the comments, allow us to revisit the master plan, because our review looks like the map that the applicant may have submitted may be the capital improvement plan, which would be the improvements the city was going to fund, not that the city has planned for future development. But we'd like to circle back around with Public Works.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
You totally read my mind, which is what I was going to say under discussion.
So I'm happy for rebuttal to happen, but I really think we ought to continue this till September 14th, when we can circle back on the water and the sewer issue.
Okay.
Did I need to add?
No, I think, I found the map submitted by the applicant. It's 5-1B, capital improvement summary. We also have a map, figure ES2 in the executive summary, recommended future capital improvements, which is
different.
Actually shows the connection across the frontage. So I think we just need to get some clarity that maybe where the discrepancy is coming from between our Public Works Department and what the applicant is looking at. So.
And you're suggesting a continuance to September
14th?
Is our next hearing.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable in moving forward with anything without consulting our Public Works staff.
Okay.
And like I said, Carrie absolutely was reading my mind.
In the meantime, does that allow for the applicant to confer with Public Works?
Absolutely. So we'll leave the record open, so the applicant will have a full opportunity to come in and update the planning commission on how the discussions went, or what we came up with, or anything like that.
So I hope Public Works can do that.
So before we move forward, does the applicant wish to have any rebuttal to the public testimony?
Or do you want to just wait and do that after continuance?
Address it real quick. For the record, Rick Givens. I understand Ms. Kreitzberg's concern about traffic going through our neighborhood, and that's certainly not the intent of this, to reroute collector and arterial traffic through the residential neighborhood. I think that the way that signage is done down at that intersection will largely determine, which way people go. My assumption would be that the local streets would have stop signs, and the collector and arterial streets would be allowed free flow through. That can all be worked out later on when and if the actual connection is made from the terminus of Anita all the way out to Leland, when the adjoining property develops, if it does. So nothing would certainly happen as a part of this development. It would be a future development. The Planning Commission could look at that intersection at that time. And just would note, too, that if there is a concern that comes up, then there could be a requirement on that subdivision for a speed hump or something like that to further discourage traffic through it if it becomes necessary. So don't think there's anything there that we can't work out in the future. We'll look at that other map that staff mentioned, and probably we'll try to arrange a time to get together with Public Works and see if we can come to some agreements on these things. So we have no objection to the 14th. We'll be continuing with the City Commission hearing on the 16th then? Is that the plan?
Probably not.
September
City-
14th.
We can't dictate
September-
the city
The city
commission
commission meeting is on September 16th. That would need to be continued
Continued
at
as
that
well.
point, because I wouldn't have a planning commission decision the week before when I have to
the 7 days
publish my
notice.
staff
So you gotta
report.
push that back a couple weeks.
Exactly.
We also request that the applicant provide an extension of the 120-day date to allow us to address
How
these
much time do we have?
concerns that were just brought up.
Where are we at in that? Everyone's asking for the continuance.
On a zone change, you don't need a 120-day.
Exactly. Yep.
It's not
We're
subject
good.
to the 120-day
Make a
limit.
rule.
Quasi-judicial.
It's quasi-judicial. You got it.
Quasi-judicial, but it's, zone changes are exempt from the 120-day rule.
Okay?
Thank you.
So we've had a request from the city attorney to continue this matter to September 14th. Do we want to make a motion to do that and forego our discussion until the
I think
next
that would be
hearing?
prudent. I would like to move that we continue, let me get all the numbers straight, ZC 1502, TP 1503, leaving the record open, continue to a date and time certain, September 14th, 7 p.m. or thereafter.
Second.
Commissioner Mahoney? Commissioner Henkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe?
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff?
Aye.
Chair Kidwell?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Very good. So, Tony, do we have any communications?
I do not.
I have one for Laura. How are your site visits going on the sign code information public outreach process?
I appreciate that question. They're done.
And how did it go?
We have a planning intern who went to visit every property within a non-residential zoning designation in the city, and she's done. So the results were pretty good. There's some mixed bag on if they liked the code or not, but it was definitely appreciated that the city took the effort to go on site. We made pamphlets to help people understand our code and to, point at signs with them and tell them what would be allowed or not be allowed, and more or less give them a heads up before it goes into effect on November 1st. So on November 1st, we will start an aggressive code enforcement campaign, and it will stay around, and it won't go away like it did last time.
Nice.
There's people in charge and consequences if we don't do what we pledge to do. And so we're very excited about sign code, and we're happy to work with the community and be a partner.
Sorry,
about moving
it's
them
giving me
forward.
directions to some place that I didn't tell it to do this. It's an old direction.
I think it was appreciated that we took the time to talk to people and make the effort.
Great.
I got my
Thanks for all the effort.
wife attended.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. My wife is attending a new church, and their response was, "We were forced by the city to cut down a 200-year-old tree so that our sign would be in compliance."
Of course.
That's baloney.
And I said, did they actually talk to them, or did they just take the examples that they were given and assume that that was their requirement? They said, no, that's what the code said. I said, there's always variances for things like trees, especially with this planning commission. So I'll tell you specifically what the location is after we're off the record, but that's just some
I'm
of
not
the...
familiar with that section of the code that requires tree removal to see a sign.
I'm not familiar with that either.
Remember that.
So may I ask you, the reason I ask the question is because I'm curious. I've noticed we've had a couple of new businesses on Malala Avenue that have, let's say, accoutrements all over the place. And there's some existing businesses on Malala Avenue that have, as their business has continued, they've added more and more and more attention-getting devices to their property.
So the attention flags where the
No, I'm not saying those specifically, though. I'm just saying these are devices that they've put there designed to attract your attention, like multiple things.
Balloons.
and
As of November 1st, we'll have an aggressive campaign. At this point, we're just doing violations that are threats to sort of larger safety concerns.
So the other question I have is that I know we had talked about there are probably a lot of signs in the city that do not have sign permits, were never permitted, and so how was that dealt with when people were visited?
So Andrea Pastor, who is our planning intern, went and did a vast majority of all the visits, and so she brought with her a couple of pamphlets, our old code, our new code, and they went through and sort of inventoried. Before we talked to anybody, there was an inventory. We sort of walk around their property on the right-of-way and look around and see what problems there are. So when we talk to them, we can sort of point out the problematic signs. So we can let them know ahead of time that we think this might be a problem or double check on that. So we wanted to not just talk to them, but tell them specifically about their property and problems that we kind of foresee. So then we take this list. So then we write down if there's a problem, what it was and where it was. And we have a list and we give it to code enforcement on November 1st. And code enforcement swings back around, and if the problem is still there, they'll start the code enforcement process. If the problem's gone, they just cross them off the list and move on. So we want compliance. We don't want to go through this nasty code enforcement thing. So then code enforcement will work on a specific plan for each of those.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what the spiel was when she went out, but I'm assuming they were strongly encouraged to be in compliance by November the 1st?
They were told that on November 1st, this list is going to code enforcement. So,
and that we strongly urge you to get in compliance and get permits or whatever they need to do. Okay.
Exactly. But we did not go through, we don't have an inventory of all existing signs, so we didn't go through and verify that they had sign permits. We just looked for ones that looked like they weren't allowed and talked about them.
So how is that going to be reconciled?
So if it looks like it's not allowed, then they can follow up with us and ask us if we have permits for it, or they can produce the permits for them, and then we can cross it out at that point.
Okay. If you would be so kind, I'd love to see a copy of the little handout that you gave to the folks. Sure. Would be nice.
We put it on our website. I can email it to the Planning Commission.
Okay, that'd be great. Tony, did you want to remind people about the September 9th event?
Remember the September 9th?
Well, I was trying to pull it up on my calendar when she started trying to give me directions to there.
Willamette Falls thing with the...
For Rediscover the Falls, it'll be a conversation with the Willamette Falls Riverwalk design team. Randy Gregg will be holding a conversation with Caramel Reed, Michelle Delk, and Alan Boniface from Dialogue. It'll be at the it's being sponsored by put on by the John Yohn Center for Architecture. It's Wednesday, September 9th, starting at 5:30 to 6:30 will be the reception, 6:30 to 8 will be the discussion, and it's at the Portland Art Museum. So we're hoping to not only get a nice showing from Oregon City residents, but also from throughout the region, representing the importance as well as the partnership over the last 4.5 years on continue to move that Blue Heron property forward with Rediscover the Falls.
For those of you people who like to imbibe, it's no host. So don't expect to come and get paid, but you probably know about the John Yohn Center, don't you? Anyway, it's through the University of Oregon. Randy Gregg is the director of that program, so all of you U of O people would probably be familiar with it. John Yohn was one of our foremost Pacific Northwest designers and architect of fabulous buildings. And if you have a chance to go to his house, it's well worth the trip. It's touring the Shire. Yes, or touring the Shire, which is equally very cool. But it's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, anything else? We are adjourned.
You.